Chapter 384. Chapter 384. All right. To stir up trouble since both sides had expressed their stance, there was no need for them to hold back. They walked together and exchanged information. Qin Feng had their own information channels, and Xin Yuan Owl and the others had made it this far because they had their own information channels. Combining all these information, they quickly came up with a set of strategies and safe routes. There's a teleportation array beneath Heaven Abyss. Xin Yuan Owl and the others were shocked. This news was too important, directly related to whether or not they could leave the 100,000 Bear Mountains. However, even when the 8 Overlord tribes joined forces in the past, they were still unable to break into the Heavenly Abyss. I'm afraid it won't be that easy to head down. Tan Xin shook his head. There must be a reason why a divine artifact floated up from Heaven Abyss, Ouyang Feng said after some thought. Maybe something happened in Heaven Abyss. We have to figure out what Heaven Abyss is and what is hidden beneath Heaven Abyss. Only then can we make a better judgment. Heaven Abyss has existed for a long time. Even the 8 Overlord races didn't know about it. With just a few of us, it's not realistic. The key question now is how are we going to escape the pursuit of the 4 Overlord clans? If we're not careful, we'll all die here. Everyone voiced their own opinions and discussed with each other. Perhaps we can borrow the strength of the 4 Overlord clans to attack Heaven Abyss. It was unknown who said this, but everyone immediately cast their gazes on Kai Yun. Being stared at by so many eyes, Kai Yun's delicate body trembled, and all the hair on her body stood on end. She was so scared that she didn't dare to speak. Each and every one of these people was terrifying. When she found out that there was a great enmity between them, she was overjoyed. She hoped that they would fight each other. It would be best if both sides were injured. That way, she would have a chance to escape. It was a pity that the 2 parties who were as incompatible as fire and water had actually cooperated and passed the test successfully. Her last hope of escape was gone. There were so many people, and none of them were weaker than her. Some were even stronger than her. Not to mention that her spiritual power was sealed. Even if she was in her peak state, she had no confidence at all. I heard the people of the Heavenly Fox clan call her Mississippi. She should have a high status in the Heavenly Fox clan, Xianyuan Xiantian said as he looked Kai Yin up and down. The latter felt chills all over her body. Being stared at by them, she felt as if she was being stared at by several ferocious beasts. Just the invisible pressure alone was enough to make her breathless. What do you want to do? Kai Yun retreated a few steps, carefully staring at the crowd. Miss of the Heavenly Fox clan, you should know the consequences of not cooperating with me. Xin Yuan Owl flicked his sleeves and said, Tell us, how can we make the 4 Overlord tribes attack Heaven Abyss? You can give up on that idea. That's simply impossible, Kai Yun said, her face revealing an expression as if she was facing death calmly. It seems like you're not afraid of death. The Dark Walker's eyes flashed coldly. Useless trash. We won't keep you by our side. As he spoke, he punched at Kai Yun. Bang! However, at this moment, a hand reached out and grabbed the Nightwalker's wrist. You can't kill him yet. The Nightwalker shook his arm and broke free from Qin Feng's grasp. He curled his lips and said, Of course I know. I was just trying to scare her. We don't have that much time to persuade her. Qin Feng glanced at him and took Kai Yun to the side. Don't waste your breath. I won't say anything, Kai Yun said. Perhaps because she was away from those people, the pressure was a lot less. Or perhaps because she felt that Qin Feng was a good person and would not kill her. She became more confident and strong. Qin Feng smiled and reached out to touch her body, undoing the golden Zen finger. Kai Yin looked at Qin Feng in confusion. What do you mean? When I sealed you, it was because I was afraid of trouble. Now I'm undoing it to show my sincerity. Qin Feng shook his head and smiled. Then he said seriously, Miss Kai Yun, you've seen our strength. Although we can't compare to the Heavenly Fox clan, I think it won't be easy for the Heavenly Fox clan to deal with us. We don't want to have any conflict with the Heavenly Fox clan or the other 3 Overlord tribes. Humph! You've already killed the people of the Heavenly Fox clan. Kai Yin snorted. If you didn't attack us, would we kill you? Qin Feng's face gradually darkened. I hope Miss Kai Yun can remember that there is a price to pay for any action. If you kill us, can't we fight back? You should know that we just want to leave the 100,000 Bear Mountains. We won't harm any of the Overlord tribes. And don't you want to leave here too? If you cooperate with us, you may have a better chance. Even the 8 Overlord tribes can't do anything. What can you do? Kaiyan curled her lips. Qin Feng smiled. There are some things that cannot be measured by pure martial strength. Since we were able to reach here, we naturally have our own methods. Also, that person is right. We can't bring a burden with us. Do you think we should kill you and end it all? Or let you go back and leak information about us? Kaiyan's eyes flashed. After a long silence, she took a deep breath and looked at Qin Feng. She asked, do you really have a way to leave the 100,000 Bear Mountains? The premise is that we can successfully enter the heavenly abyss and get close to the transmission formation. Qin Feng nodded. Why do you say that? Kaiyan was puzzled. Then, her expression changed slightly. She carefully looked around and asked in a shocked tone, you have a divine tool to open the transmission formation. Qin Feng smiled. He didn't admit or deny it. Kaiyan looked at him, trying to discern whether his smile was real or fake. But she was disappointed. She couldn't see anything from his smile. The dwarf clan said that they stole the treasure of the giant clan, but they were robbed by the snake people clan. Could it be? She covered her red lips with her lily-white hand and looked at Qin Feng in disbelief. You guys did this? Qin Feng didn't answer. He just smiled faintly. Miss Kaiyan, you only need to tell us if you want to die here or cooperate with us and fight for a chance to leave. Kaiyan was silent for a while. Then, she said, I want to leave with my people. Qin Feng nodded. As long as you don't oppose us. Tell me, what do you need me to do? Qin Feng rubbed his chin and thought for a while. His eyes flashed with calculation. Make a big deal out of this. It's best to let them know that the heavenly abyss is unstable. Let them know that the hope of leaving is right in front of them. When they attack the heavenly abyss, it will be our best chance. Kaiyan heard this and nodded lightly. Qin Feng saw this and smiled. How is it? Seeing Qin Feng and Kaiyan return, Tan Xian asked. In the near future, the 4 Overlord tribes may attack the heavenly abyss. We have to be prepared. Chapter 385. Demons and monsters. After persuading Kaiyan, everyone started to move. With the information provided by Kaiyan, it was naturally more convenient for them to hide from the tyrant tribes. They easily avoided the tyrant tribes along the way. After all, this place was close to the Heavenly Fox clan, so they were naturally familiar with the terrain. When the sky gradually darkened, they finally found a safe place. It was a small forest near a mountain stream. It was not big, but it was very remote. This is between the Heavenly Fox clan and the Naga tribe. But don't worry, the terrain here is dangerous, but the resources here are very poor. Therefore, our 2 clans don't pay much attention to this place. No one will find you, Kaiyan said to everyone. Qin Feng, can you let her go back? Tan Xian asked softly. What else can we do? Could she muddy the waters by herself? Qin Feng shook his head and said helplessly, we can only rely on the power of the Heavenly Fox clan. Moreover, they also want to leave here, so their target is not us, but the other 3 tyrant tribes. And I have a way to make her not dare to act rashly. With that, Qin Feng smiled evilly and left with Kaiyan. Why did you follow us? Are you afraid that I will harm you? Kaiyan said angrily. Won't you? Qin Feng laughed and said, I like to joke, but sometimes I don't know when to stop. Please don't take it to heart, Miss Kaiyan. What do you mean? Kaiyan frowned when she saw the smile on Qin Feng's face. Qin Feng flicked his finger and a white flame flashed. He said, when I was helping you with the golden Zen finger, I accidentally played a joke on you and put some of the flame into your body. If it accidentally exploded, you might not even have a corpse left. What did you say? Kaiyan stared at Qin Feng angrily. Qin Feng smiled and shook his finger. The white flame suddenly curled up. He said, what kind of flame is this? Kaiyan coldly stared at Qin Feng and then looked at the flame. Her eyes were somewhat blank. She could feel that the temperature of the flame was extremely high, but she didn't know what kind of flame it was. Have you heard of the ancient desolate spiritual flame? Ancient desolate spiritual flame. Kai Yun was stunned, carefully thinking about it. Her expression suddenly changed greatly. This is one of the 10 spirit fires, the ancient desolate spirit flame? You guessed right. Qin Feng smiled and said, you should know the power of the spiritual fire. If it really explodes in your body, I'm afraid that even I won't be able to save you. How did you subdue this kind of flame? Kai Yin was shocked. Each of the 10 spiritual fires of heaven and earth has the power to destroy the heavens and extinguish the earth. Even her grandfather would be extremely afraid when facing a spiritual fire. No matter how heaven-defying Qin Feng was, with his strength, how could he possibly subdue a spirit fire that even forbidden domain experts in the ninth heaven realm feared? Miss Kai Yun is focusing on the wrong point, Qin Feng said. The latter also came back to her senses and glared at Qin Feng. Are you really despicable? Hearing this, Qin Feng smiled faintly. If we can survive, we have to do even the most despicable things. You were born in a tyrant clan like the Heavenly Fox clan, and were born with a golden spoon in your mouth. Naturally, you can't understand the experience of using any means to survive. I don't have a background as big as yours. If I want to live, I can only do whatever it takes. You can say that I'm despicable, but please remember our cooperation. Once we leave the 100,000 barren mountains, this spiritual fire will naturally disappear, but if you have other thoughts, don't blame me. I have no malice towards you, but I can't gamble based on my feelings. I can't use all of our lives to gamble my trust in you. Kai Yin looked at Qin Feng in a daze. She could feel the loneliness and bitterness in Qin Feng's tone. For someone who dealt with death every day and worked hard to survive, she really couldn't understand what it was like. The anger in her heart also slowly dissipated under that bitter smile. Finally, she took a deep breath and said, I just want to bring my people out of this damn place. That's good. Qin Feng smiled. After she left, Qin Feng returned to the cave. Everyone immediately greeted him. Xian Yuan Owl asked, how trustworthy? No matter how much, aren't you already prepared? Qin Feng sneered. He didn't believe that such a shrewd guy would be unprepared. In the end, they all left. Of course, they didn't really leave, but scattered around. It was no wonder that they were so careful. Once Kai Yun desperately led the Heavenly Fox clan to encircle and annihilate them, they had no chance of survival. Qin Feng did use a little ancient spiritual desolate flame to contain Kai Yun, but he couldn't be unprepared. Just like Xian Yuan Owl, no matter how trustworthy the other party's performance was, they didn't believe it. Only when a real way out was in front of them was it worth believing. During these few days of hiding, they often sensed an extremely terrifying aura appearing here, but it didn't make a move. It seemed to be probing this place. After a few probing, the aura disappeared and never appeared again. After that, it was very quiet here. There was no movement. Of course, this was referring to their place. And outside, it was already chaotic. The Heavenly Fox clan also participated in a large number of people. Moreover, they didn't know where the news came from, but there was a strange movement in Heavenly Abyss. The divine weapon appeared because the transmission formation would be activated soon. The various Overlord clans naturally knew a lot about Heavenly Abyss. They knew what the activation of the transmission formation meant. And there was also news that there was a second divine weapon to activate the transmission formation in Heavenly Abyss. It would also appear in the near future. This made the various clans even more crazy. Even the other powerful spirit beast clans in the surrounding areas joined in. After the initial chaos, the 4 Overlord clans stopped fighting. They reorganized the spirit beast clans in the surrounding area and marched towards Heavenly Abyss. They were going to attack Heavenly Abyss again. Qin Feng and the others had been outside inquiring about the news. After learning all this, they were all excited. They followed behind the 4 Overlord clans all the way. That night, Kai Yin found them and told them that the 4 Overlord clans and other spirit beast clans had already attacked Heavenly Abyss. However, they were met with fierce resistance from the demons. Demons? Qin Feng and the others looked around. They had never heard of such a clan in the 100,000 Bear Mountains. This is a very terrifying creature. They are all mountain spirits and monsters. They are the creatures guarding Heavenly Abyss. They are very powerful. Kaiyun's pretty face was solemn, but there was also some doubt. But this time, the power of the demons seems to have been greatly weakened. According to my clan's analysis, there really is a possibility that there is an abnormality under Heavenly Abyss that caused the divine weapon to appear. A lot of the demon's power is needed to maintain the abnormality below. We now have a big advantage and are planning to attack below. But you have to be careful. The demon's attack methods are unpredictable. They are a very powerful clan. Chapter 386. Knocked out a day later, the 4 overlord tribes officially entered Heaven Abyss. The demons were defeated along the way and could no longer form an effective defense. At this time, Qin Feng and the others also moved. Of course, they were not the only ones. Many weaker spirit beast tribes were also waiting for an opportunity to enter Heaven Abyss. Qin Feng and the others moved quickly and mingled with these spirit beast tribes. This is so King terrifying. Even if these spirit beast tribes were too weak to participate in the attack, their overall strength was still very strong. If not for the fact that this place was too chaotic, Qin Feng had mental power, and Xinyuan Owl and the others had evasive methods, they would not have dared to follow these spirit beast tribes. Because the closer they got to Heaven Abyss, the stronger the spirit beast tribes were. In the end, even level 6 spirit beasts appeared. At level 6, they had the strength of a level 9 Heaven Realm cultivator. When the beast horde-like spiritual beast army charged towards the Heavenly Abyss, the terrifying pressure caused even Qin Feng and the others, who were already prepared, to be quietly speechless. The 100,000 barren mountains were indeed terrifying. This was the unanimous conclusion that everyone came to. No wonder the older generation often said that the 100,000 barren mountains were extremely dangerous and no one dared to enter. Even level 9 Heaven Realm cultivators did not dare to casually enter this place. Only those who had experienced it personally could deeply understand the danger. In the past, they had cleverly avoided it. Later on, with the help of the elf tribe, they had not interacted with the spirit beast tribes at all. The only ones they really interacted with were the elf tribe and the 4 overlord tribes. Now that they really came into contact with these spirit beast tribes, they finally understood the terror of the 100,000 Bear Mountains. Moreover, these spirit beast tribes were weak and did not have the qualifications to participate in the attack. It could be seen that if these tribes in the 100,000 Barren Mountains were to unite, their strength would be terrifying. Primitive land would probably be gone in a flash. Fortunately, these tribes' target was Heaven Abyss. Otherwise, primitive land would have been long gone. Everyone continued to head towards Heavenly Abyss. Because the 4 overlord tribes had attacked first and the spirit beast army had paved the way, they moved much faster than before. In just half a day, they had almost reached Heavenly Abyss. In the depths of the 100,000 Barren Mountains, not even the sound of birds chirping could be heard. The blazing light seemed to be unable to shine in at all. It was dark and faint. Not only was there no sense of tranquility, there was an eerie feeling that made people feel extremely uncomfortable. The vaguely domineering pressure of a high-ranked spirit beast could be felt in the air, causing everyone else to feel oppressed. The depths of the 100,000 Barren Mountains are indeed not simple. Squinting their eyes and looking at the lush mountain range around them, everyone could not help but shake their heads and exclaim, "Rumble!" All of a sudden, there was a loud explosion in front of them. Following that, the screams and roars of spirit beasts could be heard one after another. Qin Feng and the rest were shocked and hurried over. When they saw the battle scene in the distance, they were so shocked that their mouths fell open. There were at least hundreds of spirit beasts in this area, but at this moment, a large number of them had fallen. In front of them, there were some black figures. These black figures were of different shapes. Some of them were dozens of meters tall and had 6 antennae. Wherever they passed, the spirit beast screamed. There were also some that were in human form, but their bodies were pitch black and their faces could not be seen. They were as fast as ghosts and shuttled among the spirit beasts. Every time they flashed, they would be accompanied by a spurt of blood. Some of them could not even be seen because they could change at will. Some were in human form, some were in beast form, and some were even in liquid form. They were all different in shape. However, they had one thing in common, and that was their blood-red eyes. They were very bloodthirsty and cruel. There were less than 20 black figures in total, but hundreds of spirit beasts could not resist at all. These are demons and monsters. Everyone was shocked. It was their first time seeing these mysterious creatures, and they were quite shocked. Their strength could not be sensed because they did not have spiritual power. Instead, they had a special kind of power. However, seeing that a 5th-level spirit beast was killed in a few moves, one could imagine how strong these demons and monsters were. This was not an individual strength, but a universal strength. At least, these dozen demons and monsters were very strong. There were no weaklings. Rumble. When a 6th-level spirit beast joined the battle, the situation changed. However, very soon, even stronger demons and monsters appeared. They were pitch black and looked like centipedes. They were evenly matched with the 6th-level spirit beast. There are actually such powerful demons and monsters left here. Everyone was shocked, but they soon understood that this was probably done by the 4 overlord tribes on purpose. How could they not guess that there were spirit beasts that wanted to take advantage of the situation? Therefore, they deliberately left some spirit beasts that escaped the net to stop them. The overlord tribes were not so kind to let other spirit beasts enjoy the fruits of their labor. We've already reached the depths. Heaven Abyss should be right in front of us. Right now, we don't know how many demons and monsters are comparable to 9th-level Heaven Realm powerhouses. We can't stay in such an exposed place. If any one of them jumps out, we'll have to say goodbye to this world. Qin Feng scanned the surroundings with his sharp eyes. Hearing this, everyone nodded and did not say anything. It was necessary to maintain absolute silence in the depths. They all suppressed their auras to the extreme because there was no lack of spirit beasts and demons and monsters that had an extremely sharp sense of smell in the depths. Everyone took out their special skills and quickly shuttled through the area. They did not participate in any battle between spirit beasts and demons and monsters. No matter how strong the demons and monsters that escaped the net were, there could not be too many of them. Therefore, under the attack of many spirit beasts, they were defeated. They did not fight head-on, but scattered and infiltrated the vicinity of Heaven Abyss to ambush the spirit beasts. In a dense forest, Qin Feng and the others were scattered on the nearby branches. He parted the branches and leaves and looked at the small-scale battle below. It was a few demons and monsters that were ambushing a dozen spirit beasts. They were quickly wiped out. Qin Feng and the others looked at each other and quickly swooped down. At the same time, Tan Xian, Xian Yuan Owl, and the others rushed over from several directions. Suddenly sensing the eruption of several powerful auras, these demons and monsters were also startled. Squeaking sounds came out from their mouths as they quickly dispersed, transforming into numerous black sharp arrows that rushed towards Qin Feng and the others. Jing Wui raised deicide and slashed at a winged demon and monster that looked like a flying insect. With a clank, Jing Wui was sent flying. That demon and monster also exploded and smashed into the ground. Qin Feng quickly rushed over and pressed his mind energy on its body. Then he punched its head and knocked it out. The other parties also finished off their opponents quickly and cleanly. There were very few demons and monsters. They were almost 2 against 1, and it was a sneak attack. It was difficult for them to not succeed. Chapter 387. Into Heaven's Abyss in the quiet forest, the leaves were luxuriant, and the branches were intertwined with each other. It was as if a large net had enveloped this place. Occasionally, a breeze would blow, and the branches would sway. Only then would a bit of light shine in. Qin Feng and the others grabbed a demon and monsters and hid here. A few of them scattered around and were on high alert. They studied it for a while, and all of them frowned. They couldn't tell what race this Qi Mei and Wang Liang belonged to. Neither human nor beast. They don't have spiritual energy. Qin Feng shook his head and said, spiritual energy has no effect on them. Not only were the demons and monsters immune to spiritual energy, even the might of the divine dragon seemed to be ineffective against them. These two powers were used to restrain the beasts, but the evil spirits were not affected. Clearly, they were not beasts. It's neither a beast nor a human. What is it? Everyone was puzzled. As far as they knew, there were no other mysterious races in the natural world other than the human race and the beast race. Even the elves and the other 4 overlord races had some human or beast blood in them. However, none of this was reflected in the demons and monsters. If they didn't understand everything about them, they wouldn't know their weaknesses. In this way, it would be very difficult for them to deal with these things. After all, there were many in Heaven Abyss. He had to find a way to restrain it. Xianyuan Owl frowned. They had seen the power of the demons and monsters. Since they dared to fight the 4 overlord tribes, it was enough to show how terrifying they were. As for the strength of these demons and monsters as a whole, they had no idea. Just dealing with these beasts was troublesome because they didn't use spiritual power, so they didn't know how to fight. Qin Feng asked Su Xiaochun. The elves have also fought with demons and monsters. Didn't they find anything? The latter shook his head blankly and said, I wasn't even born at that time. I don't even know what demons and monsters are. Qin Feng frowned. He would have believed it if Kai Yun had played a trick on them. However, why didn't Shu Changkong mention anything about demons and monsters? He only said that there were mysterious creatures in Heavenly Abyss. It seems like they haven't discovered the weakness of the demons and monsters. He said, if they had discovered it, the Overlord clans would have joined forces to destroy the demons and monsters. Everyone nodded. This conjecture was very reliable. The demons and monsters relied on a mysterious power that others could not understand to become so powerful. Old Devil, what do you think? Qin Feng asked in his mind. This is a strange creature. They don't cultivate spiritual power or mental power. Instead, they seem to be related to the legendary Yin soldiers. Yin soldiers? Is it related to hell? Qin Feng's heart trembled. It's hard to say. It's just a guess. We don't even know if hell exists yet. However, according to some records, their power is very similar to Nether Chi. Nether energy? What is this? It's similar to the spiritual power and mental power that you all cultivate, Demon Eye said. Qin Feng narrowed his eyes. He felt that there was something wrong with Demon Eye's tone. It was as if he was hiding something, or as if he was deliberately avoiding something. However, since Demon Eye had said so, he did not want to say more. He asked, do you know of any way to restrain these things? I haven't come into contact with them, so it's hard to say. After a moment of silence, Demon Eye said again, however, your yin and yang power should be able to restrain them. As long as they belong to this world, no matter how mysterious they are, they will have their own yin and yang. Moreover, the 100 calamity sky, swallowing art, should be able to devour their power. Hearing this, Qin Feng nodded secretly. He quietly circulated the 100 calamity sky, swallowing art. He pressed his palm on the demons and monsters, and a wisp of devouring power surged. It swallowed a small part of the black-gray air flow, and after conversion, it became a small amount of spiritual power that was injected into his energy sea. Qin Feng's eyes lit up. The 100 calamity sky, swallowing art, could also devour their power. This made things easier. Then his palm shook slightly. Black and white spiritual power lingered and converged into a yin and yang embrace diagram. Suddenly, a sizzling sound was heard. In less than 10 seconds, the demons and monsters were corroded into a pile of ashes. Everyone was shocked, especially Xianyuan Owl and the others from the imperial capital. Their eyes flickered. They had come into contact with Qin Feng before, so they knew how powerful this corrosive power was. This method can restrain the demons and monsters. Xianyuan Owl's tone was inexplicable. It sounded like he was doubtful, but at the same time, he sounded like he was certain. This is just a means of resistance. It can't be said to restrain them. Qin Feng glanced at them and said indifferently, "Don't tell me you don't have any means of resistance." They shook their heads and smiled, but did not say anything. Although they had no way to restrain the demons and monsters, it did not mean that they were helpless against them. They stopped for a moment, then quickly left the place and rushed toward the heavenly abyss. Under the attack of the spirit beast army, the number of demons and monsters left on the surface was decreasing. They were no longer a threat. They were very fast. In less than half an hour, they were already close to the heavenly abyss. A huge chasm-like abyss stretched across this place. It was unknown how far the two ends were, but their eyes could not reach it. The heavenly abyss was very wide, about 500 meters. They could fly over this distance. However, above the heavenly abyss, there was a terrifying heavenly astral chi raging. This heavenly astral chi was very strong. Not to mention them, even the super powerhouses in the ninth heaven realm would be torn to pieces in a short time once they stepped in. This was also why no one dared to cross the heavenly abyss. They had to think of a way under the heavenly abyss. Inside the heavenly abyss, it was pitch black. Nothing could be seen except for the occasional ripple. It was filled with heart-palpitating fluctuations that spread slightly and disappeared in a flash. They looked at each other and nodded slightly. Spiritual energy covered their bodies, and then they jumped into the heavenly abyss. The dark abyss, as far as the eye could see, was shrouded in endless darkness. In this place, darkness and coldness was the only thing. Even if Qin Feng used the immemorial desolate spirit flame, the temperature and light it could bring was limited to a very small area. Although this place belonged to the 100,000 barren mountains, it seemed to be incompatible with the environment of this world. It was the same space, but it had two different attributes. In the heavenly abyss, there was a terrifying flow of energy. Spatial turbulence surged, and the void was distorted. This was caused by the energy being too strong. Here, even the ordinary bone-strengthening realm people could not bear it. What shocked them was that they had only descended less than 100 meters. It was hard to imagine how the tyrants and spiritual beasts could reach the bottom of the heavenly abyss. Could it be that the weakest ones were bone-strengthening realm and rank 3 spiritual beasts? Everyone was alert. They slowly descended to the bottom. This place was not as dark as they had imagined. It was just that the light was dim. The space at the bottom was very large, but it was extremely dense. It was as if they were in a world of ice. It made the air extremely moist, as if it would freeze soon. They have already broken through here. Everyone's eyes swept around and found signs of a great battle. There were many corpses of spiritual beasts, tyrants, and many demons. They could see that there were dozens of meters tall giants lying here. There were also serpent men with human heads and snake bodies nailed to the stone walls by black spears. Chapter 388. Unknown black hole. Everyone moved quickly and searched for the direction according to the traces of the battle. Although the space at the bottom was very large, they quickly discovered a huge concealed cave under their full-speed search. The cave was incomparably dark, but there was a faint light emitting from its depths. It was very mysterious. Moreover, there were corpses inside and outside the cave. Obviously, it was in the same direction. There's one here too. I found it here too. One after another, they discovered many things, and it wasn't just in one direction. It seems like the 4 overlord tribes don't know where the teleportation portal is either. Jing Wui grinned. There were only a few of them, and it was not enough for each of them to follow one direction. They did not know which direction to go, but they knew that they would not split up. They had come here together, and they would either leave together or die here together. Qin Feng and the others wanted to shake off Xinyuan Owl and the others and use the rotten wooden box as an experiment to see if they could sense the location of the teleportation portal. However, they were too smart and did not give them any time to gather together. They shook their heads secretly and gave up the idea of attacking. This place was full of danger. Who knew when they would meet the overlords, spirit beasts, or demons? It was not the time to fall out with them. In the end, Qin Feng took out the rotten wooden box. The legendary weapon is in your hands? Xin Yuan Owl and the others were shocked, and their eyes flickered. The atmosphere became tense. What? You want to make a move now? Qin Feng coldly said. Xin Yuan Owl smiled and waved his hand. We won't attack before we leave the 100,000 Bear Mountains. Although they were shocked that Qin Feng and the others had snatched the legendary weapon to open the teleportation portal, they gave up on the idea in the end. Snatching by force would not work at all. It would make the situation worse. Before they left the 100,000 Bear Mountains, any living thing that appeared here was their enemy. Hence, cooperation was still very important. Seeing this, Qin Feng and the others relaxed. They moved the rotten wooden box and aimed it at different directions. Soon, the rotten wooden box vibrated slightly in a few directions. 3 directions. Everyone was in a dilemma. Could it be that they had to be divided into 3 groups? Perhaps different routes lead to the same destination, Xin Yuan Owl said. Everyone nodded. It was impossible for there to be 3 teleportation arrays. Perhaps the final destination of these 3 directions was connected to a teleportation array. After discussing for a while, they finally chose a location with fewer traces of battle and that didn't look so horrifying. This was a cave entrance, and the interior was dark and deep. Strands of gang chi blew out, and this gang chi carried a dense chill. Whoosh! Just as they entered the cave, a fierce wind whizzed over. The kind of dark and bone-piercing chill caused their bodies to shiver. Only Qin Feng could ignore it. He even liked this kind of coldness. After all, the coldness of the underworld pill was much stronger than this. Unless there was a coldness that surpassed the underworld pill, it wouldn't affect him at all. However, he didn't want to stand out. With a thought, the ancient, desolate spiritual flame left his body and turned into countless white light spots. The flames rose up and circled around him and Tan Xian and the others. The light spots were like stars in the sky, and it had a very good illumination effect. At the same time, with the appearance of the ancient, desolate spiritual flame, the coldness in the surroundings disappeared. Spiritual flame? Xin Yuan Owl and the others were shocked. Their eyes were complicated. They didn't expect Qin Feng to have a spiritual flame. Sorry, my control is limited. You guys have to think of a way yourselves. Qin Feng glanced at Xin Yuan Owl and the others and said indifferently. The few of them recovered from their shock and smiled coldly. Golden light surged out and turned into the Emperor Bell, covering them. On the Emperor Bell, there was a purple flame burning. It could also illuminate and resist the coldness. With the help of the weak light, Qin Feng and the others carefully walked into the cave. Although there were many corpses, the cave was still very spacious. The strong wind brought with it a cold aura, whistling past from time to time. However, it didn't have any effect on them. Obviously, the coldness and the strong wind was no threat to the ancient, desolate spiritual flame and the purple flame on the Emperor Bell. After walking for more than 10 minutes, the surroundings became more spacious. The light gradually became brighter, and they could barely see the outline of the cave. After walking for more than half an hour, they finally reached the bottom. To be precise, it wasn't the bottom, but the space had become wider. After passing through a 2-meter-wide hole, their vision suddenly widened. It was a flat area of a few hundred square meters. The walls were steep, and it was more than 3 meters high. It was like a small room. There was nothing here, and there weren't any corpses. This made him puzzled. Could it be that the tyrants or the spiritual beasts that entered this area were all dead? He still didn't find anything and left. Soon, their gazes were fixed on the center of the flat area, where there was a deep hole about 1 meter in diameter. Everyone looked at each other, then carefully walked over and approached the edge of the hole. This hole doesn't seem to be shallow, Jing Wui said. Qin Feng picked up a small stone nearby and threw it in. There was no response for a long time. Damn, how deep is it? Jing Wui was shocked. The others were also shocked, and their faces were full of disbelief. It was extremely quiet here, and they could hear every sound clearly. However, when a fist-sized stone was thrown in, there was no response at all. Even if it was 200 or 300 meters deep, There should be some echo. Moreover, they touched the side and found that the space inside was the same. It was like a well, hanging straight down. In a limited space, it was impossible for there to be no echo. Staring at the dark hole, Qin Feng frowned. Get out of the way. Xianyuan Xiantian knocked a large stone that weighed more than 50 kilograms from the stone wall and threw it into the hole. They quickly listened carefully. A minute passed, but there was no movement at all. It was extremely quiet. What's going on? Everyone was dumbfounded. They had come here with great difficulty, but in the end, there was such a bottomless hole. Where does it lead to? Is it dangerous? These were the doubts in their minds, so no one dared to rashly enter. Qin Feng took out the rotten wooden box and aimed it at the hole. Sure enough, there was a strange movement. This path is correct, Qin Feng said. Everyone looked at each other, but no one said anything. In the face of such an unknown situation, no one would take the lead. Just when everyone was hesitating, a violent fluctuation of spiritual power suddenly came from outside. A battle had broken out again. Oh no, the battle is spreading here. Tanxian went out to observe for a while. When he came back, his face was slightly gloomy. He said, the hole has been blocked. Many spirit beasts are fighting with demons, and many demons have already entered. Let's go. Since we are here, no matter where this hole leads, we have to go. Chapter 389. Infinite Loop? Qin Feng's eyes flickered. To be honest, he was unwilling to go back like this, but there was no way out. There was only this black hole, so who would dare to take the risk to go down? Everything had a price, but once the price was out of his control, he would have to think carefully about whether it was worth it. Without being forced to a certain extent, it was difficult for people to make a decision, just like them now. However, when their escape route was cut off and the demons and monsters approached, they had no choice but to continue forward. Let's go into the black hole, Qin Feng said, and took the lead to jump into the black hole. Big Explosion didn't even think about it, and immediately jumped in with Qin Feng. Jing Wui and Tan Xian looked at each other and gritted their teeth. The former picked up Su Xiaochun and jumped into the black hole. The demons and monsters had charged in, and they had no way out. They didn't know how strong these demons and monsters were, but since they could guard the underground of Heaven Abyss, they were naturally not weak. If they fought head-on, they would probably die here. Instead of that, they might as well take the risk. At least, they would have a chance of survival in an unknown place. What should we do? Seeing Qin Feng and the others jump into the black hole and sensing the powerful aura approaching quickly, Ouyang frowned and asked. Xianyuan Owl's eyes flickered for a while, then revealed a ruthless expression. Let's jump. We can't go back anyway, so we can only risk it. He took the lead and jumped in. Ouyang also jumped in with Ouyang Qingqing, leaving Xianyuan Xiantian and the Dark Walker behind. The surroundings were dark, and Qin Feng could only feel himself falling rapidly. The wind whistled in his ears. Uncle, catch me. Exploding Flowers' cry came from the battlefield. Qin Feng summoned a pair of light wings to slow down the falling speed and caught the falling Exploding Flowers. Uncle, where will we fall? Exploding Flowers asked. Qin Feng's spiritual power spread out and was immediately suppressed. However, his expression changed slightly. His spiritual power could not spread out in this place. It could only spread out a few meters around his body. The image that was transmitted into his mind was dark. The strange situation made him feel uncertain. He didn't know where he would land. However, this worry did not last long. Soon after, he felt his body become lighter, as if he had passed through a layer of membrane. After that, he felt that he was stepping on solid ground. At the same time, the surrounding light suddenly lit up. He widened his eyes and looked at the scene in front of him in disbelief. This was a huge space, similar to a huge palace, and he was currently in this palace. The palace was dark red in color, and the lighting was somewhat dim. It gave people a sense of oppression, as if it was covered in dust. In the palace, there were numerous dark red stone pillars that supported the palace. The stone pillars were carved with various patterns, and each of them was ferocious and emitted an ancient and savage aura. Bang! A slight sound was heard. Tan Xian, Jing Wui, and the others appeared beside Qin Feng, followed by Xianyuan Owl and the others. What is this place? Everyone was shocked, just like Qin Feng was at the beginning. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The sound of something breaking through the air continued. Black shadows fell, and roars were heard. Qin Feng and the others quickly dispersed. Then there was a huge roar. Some of the demons and spirit beasts had also killed their way in. This surprised them, but after carefully sensing for a moment, they did not find any rank 6 spirit beasts or 9th layer heaven realm demons, so they relaxed. As long as these experts did not appear, they would not be a threat to them. They did not participate in the battle. Instead, they quietly waited for the battle to end. When it was about to end, they quickly took care of all the remaining demons and suppressed a few low-level spirit beasts. They did not stay for long and quickly looked for a way out. This place was like an underground palace. It was very large, and there were many thick stone pillars standing there, like giants standing there. There were all kinds of patterns carved on the stone pillars, and it was difficult to identify them. Some of them were shaped like humans, some like beasts, and some were shaped like patterns or words. It was very complicated. These are very ancient words. Xianyuan Owl's eyes flickered as he pointed at some of the patterns on the stone pillars. These are words. Qin Feng and the others were shocked. These were clearly patterns and had nothing to do with words. Yes, Xianyuan Owl nodded. His eyes were shining as he said, "These words are quite ancient. If I'm not wrong, they're probably even older than the ancient words recorded in the imperial capital. They're indeed different from the words derived from the important nodes of the ancient words evolution." Xianyuan Xiantian nodded. His eyes were burning. These were probably left behind by creatures from an even more ancient era. If they could memorize some cultivation methods and mnemonics, it would definitely not be simple. He carefully stared at these patterns and compared them with the ancient words. Then, he pondered and studied them. If he could decipher these words, he might be able to find out where this place was. Probably only the imperial family of the imperial capital had some understanding of the ancient words. Qin Feng and the others could only be anxious. They stared at Xianyuan Owl and Xianyuan Xiantian to see if their expressions changed. They were worried that the other party would discover something and not tell them. "Be careful." The others were even more careful. Suddenly, the demonic eye's voice sounded in Qin Feng's mind. His tone was somewhat gloomy and complicated. "It's not very useful. It's just some desperate creatures venting the hatred in their hearts." Qin Feng was startled. He immediately reacted. He had almost forgotten about this old monster, the demonic eye. "Old demon, do you recognize these words?" he asked in his mind. "Let's go and see if there's any other way out nearby." "The words recorded here won't be of any help to you," the demonic eye said. Qin Feng's eyes flickered. He could tell that the demonic eye's tone was somewhat anxious. However, he didn't ask. "Let's go," Qin Feng said to Tan Xian and the others. Then he left. "What's wrong?" The others were puzzled. "Isn't he worried that we'll discover something?" Qin Feng shook his head and said with certainty, "They won't find any useful information here." Seeing that Qin Feng and the others, who were staring at them nervously earlier, left without any hesitation, Xianyuan Owl and the others were also stunned. They looked at each other and left as well. This was because they had indeed studied a few words, but they didn't find any useful information. They quickly searched the area and soon found another black hole that was exactly the same as the previous one. They threw a suppressed, low-rank spirit beast into it. After a long time, there was no reaction at all. "It's the same situation. Let's go all out." Jing Wui gritted his teeth and said, "Since we're already here, let's go all the way and see where it takes us." They agreed to continue traveling. Qin Feng nodded slightly and stopped talking. He took a deep breath and jumped into the black hole. The others quickly followed. The situation was similar to the last time. They also landed in a huge space similar to a palace. Even the furnishings were similar to the previous one. "Don't tell me we've returned to the starting point." Jing Wui was doubtful. "This place is very similar to the place just now." The big explosion also looked around curiously. "It's not the same. The words recorded here are different." Xianyuan Owl shook his head. Let's continue. The demonic eye's voice was heard. Qin Feng nodded and quickly walked forward. The others also thought of something and quickly followed. Chapter 390. 18 Levels of Hell. F***CK. Another one? Jing Wui's mouth was wide open. Continue, Qin Feng said calmly, and then jumped in. This time, it was a similar situation. The few of them were completely dumbfounded. What was going on? If I'm not wrong, this should be the third level. The third floor? What do you mean? Qin Feng asked secretly. The demonic eye did not respond. It only said indifferently, continue. Sure enough, they found the same kind of black hole in the center. The fourth floor, the fifth floor, damn, 8 black holes have appeared. The few of them couldn't take it anymore. If this continued, when would it end? Who knew how many black holes there were? Would it continue to circulate endlessly? At first, Xinyuan Owl and the others were still interested. They studied the words on every floor, but now they were numb to it. Something's not right. Just as they were about to go to the center, Qin Feng's expression suddenly changed. He stopped them and looked around with an incomparably cold expression. What's wrong? Jing Wui saw this and immediately looked around, but found nothing. There seems to be something here, Qin Feng said with uncertainty. When they heard this, their hair stood on end. Qin Feng, you can't say such things blindly. You'll scare me to death. Jing Wui grinned. This place had layers upon layers, like small worlds. It was indescribably ancient. They didn't see a single living creature. Yet Qin Feng said there was something here. No matter how they listened to it, they felt a little scared. Qin Feng shook his head, his eyes constantly sweeping around, his eyebrows furrowed. He couldn't tell what was different about this place, but as soon as he arrived here, he felt that this place was completely different from the previous 8th level. It was as if he had heard something calling him. Qin Feng couldn't tell what it was. Everyone, be careful, he reminded them in a low voice. Then, they slowly walked towards the center. In the next moment, everyone's pupils shrank fiercely, the hair on their bodies stood on end, and spiritual energy gushed out. Around the black hole, there were figures sitting cross-legged. These figures were all in human form, wearing very ancient clothes. Even Xinyuan Owl and the others could not tell which ancient era they came from. They were all skin and bones. Their cheekbones were protruding and their eye sockets were sunken. There was no flesh or blood at all. They were completely dried corpses, as if they had experienced countless years and been eroded by wind and frost. But what kind of divine master was able to maintain his physical body without rotting after so many years? It was hard for them to imagine. Old devil, what's going on? Qin Feng anxiously contacted the old devil. When he saw the dried corpses, he didn't know why, but his heart ached. However, there was no response from the demonic eye. Old man, you have to tell me what to do next, Qin Feng asked. Alas, the demonic eye sighed and said in a low voice, it's just as I thought. You've come to a place you shouldn't have. The demonic eye's tone made Qin Feng's heart shrink. He said, Old devil, what is this place? It might be the will of the heavens that you can come here. I won't interfere with you. You can only rely on yourself. The demonic eye said. Qin Feng was confused. What was going on? Why did this old thing not care about him? Old devil, he shouted in his heart, but there was no response from the demonic eye. Qin Feng was surprised. What was this place? Why did the demonic eye act so strangely when it entered? Unable to solve the doubts in his heart, Qin Feng could only look at the dried corpses. If the demonic eye didn't help him, he would think of a way himself. These dried corpses didn't have any spiritual energy fluctuations. They didn't look dangerous, but they didn't dare to approach. It was as if they were suppressed. What should we do next? No one knew if they had entered the next level. Qin Feng was silent for a while. He took out the rotten wooden box and aimed it at the entrance of the cave. This time, the rotten wooden box reacted even more strongly. He could even hear faint special fluctuations coming from inside. The direction is right. Looks like we can only continue to go down, Qin Feng said. No one had any objections. Since they had come this far, they would be unwilling to go back. When they threw the last low-rank spirit beast over, the spirit beast was so frightened that it lay on the ground. Its body trembled, and it was so scared that it peed. In the end, it rolled its eyes and fainted. Looking at this, everyone looked grave and did not dare to go close. As time passed, everyone gradually became irritated. They couldn't advance or retreat, which made them feel quite uncomfortable and depressed. Damn it, let's go. If these dried corpses really want to kill us, we won't be able to survive. Cowering isn't what a man should do. Jing Wui threw caution to the wind and strode forward. When he arrived in front of the dried corpses, he bowed with respect and said, "Seniors, I had no choice but to barge into this place. Please forgive me." Since the dried corpses did not react, Jing Wui braced himself and walked toward the black hole. "Are you okay?" He sensed his body's condition and asked Qin Feng and the others. Seeing this, the others no longer hesitated. They bowed at the dried corpses and jumped into the black hole to enter the next level. As soon as they arrived at this level, everyone gasped. The temperature here dropped drastically, which was completely different from the previous 9 levels. Moreover, the feeling was very different as well. The air in the entire space seemed to have changed. It was as though they were in 2 completely different worlds. It was a subtle feeling. "Be careful," Qin Feng reminded them. They nodded and carefully explored this level. The environment on the 10th level was different from the previous 9 levels. There was a huge change. It was like an underground cave, which was complicated. The ground was uneven, and there were rugged rocks of strange shapes. Some of them were like caves, some were like tunnels, and some were like canyons. The rotten wooden box reacted again, and it vibrated toward a pitch-black tunnel. Everyone walked into the tunnel carefully. They released their spiritual power to deal with any sudden changes. The tunnel was very dark. It was not as dim as the previous 9 levels, but it was not pitch black. It was almost impossible to see one's fingers, and there was a chilly wind in the tunnel. The tunnel did not seem to be far from them, but it still took them half an hour to reach it. Popcorn looked at the tunnel with its big eyes and frowned instinctively. It seemed like it did not want to go in, but it did not say anything when it saw that the others had gone in. Everyone carefully walked into the tunnel. Everyone used their own methods to sense their surroundings. Within 100 meters of them, no living thing could escape their senses. The tunnel was very balanced and straight. It was more than 10 meters wide on both sides, and it was at least 6 stories tall. "This looks like normal bricks?" Qin Feng frowned as he touched the smooth, cold, and damp walls. These bricks were very common outside, but it felt completely different. "It does look normal." Jing Wui nodded. He raised D aside and slashed at the wall, but he was pushed back. Everyone was stunned and looked at the wall in surprise. They had seen how powerful Jing Wui's slash was, but it did not leave any mark on the wall. "I was afraid that it would collapse, so I only used 10 to 20% of my strength." Jing Wui felt a little embarrassed. He took a deep breath and gathered all his strength. He held D aside tightly and smashed it against the wall. It was like a small earthquake. Everyone's ears hurt from the vibrations. However, what was surprising was that there was no damage to the wall at all. There wasn't even a single crack on it. "This is not a normal rock." Qin Feng nodded. With Jing Wui's strength, he could destroy a rock that was thousands of kilograms with one slash. "Let's go back." Suddenly, Popcorn stopped and did not move forward. "What's wrong?" Qin Feng asked. I don't feel well," Popcorn said. Her face turned pale, and her small body kept trembling. Qin Feng was shocked. He quickly went over to check her body, but he did not find anything wrong. "Uncle, this place makes me uncomfortable, and this aura feels familiar," Popcorn said with difficulty. Her rosy face turned even paler. Her eyes gradually became hollow, and her body trembled even more. She mumbled incoherently, "This is the 18th level of hell." Chapter 391. Blackhand bones in the dark tunnel. It was dead silent. A cold wind blew, echoing in the narrow space. The whistling wind was like the howling of ghosts, making people's hair stand on end. They stared blankly at the strange scene. Their minds seemed to explode, and they couldn't say anything. What? This is the 18 levels of hell. Everyone was stunned. They looked at each other, and in the next second, their scalps went numb. The human world had 18 levels of purgatory, and the underworld had 18 levels of hell. This represented the highest punishment of the two worlds. It was said that the 18 levels of hell were used to deal with ghosts, just like the 18 levels of purgatory in the human world. It was a punishment. The 18 levels of hell, each more terrifying than the last. It was used to punish people who committed heinous crimes in their lifetime. There were also some ancient legends that said the 18 levels of hell were located at the border between the human world and the underworld. They were divided into the yin-yang prison. The upper 9 levels were the yang prison, located in the human world. The lower 9 levels were the yin prison, located in the underworld. They had gone through 9 levels, and this level was the 10th. If the legend was true, then wouldn't this level be the yin prison of the 18 levels of hell? Everyone's scalps went numb, and their bodies went cold, as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. They had actually broken into hell. This can't be true, someone said in an unnatural tone. It should be fake. The so-called underworld is just a legend. It doesn't exist. Xian Yuan Al said. His tone was relatively calm, but his hands hidden in his sleeves were trembling slightly, betraying his state of mind. No one said anything, and their hearts seemed to be shrouded by a layer of dark clouds. Although the underworld was just a legend, and there was no real evidence to prove its existence, the legends about it had never stopped. They didn't want to believe it, but when they thought about their previous experiences, they were a little scared. The upper 9 levels of hell were the yang prison, located in the human world. It was said that the yang prison was not dangerous, and was connected to the yin prison, which was the passage to the underworld. They had gone through the 9 levels before, and nothing special had happened. However, when they entered the 10th level, they obviously felt that something was wrong. This was very consistent with the 9 levels of the yang prison and the 9 levels of the yin prison. There were even rumors that the 9th layer of yin prison was a purgatory for ghosts. Only ghosts could enter. If this legend was true, then wouldn't they all be ghosts? Thinking of this, everyone couldn't care about anything else and quickly turned back. They wanted to return to Yang prison, but the black hole above them had disappeared and there was no way to go. It's over. We can't go back. We become ghosts. Ouyang Qingqing and Su Xiaoqun were so scared that their eyes were brimming with tears. No matter what, when faced with such a situation, a girl's ability to withstand it was still much weaker. Of course, Qin Feng and the others also had ugly expressions. After all, no one could accept the fact that they had suddenly become ghosts. Old devil, is this place really the 18th level of hell? Qin Feng secretly contacted the old devil. The current situation was far beyond what he could handle. That should be the case, the demonic eye replied, but Qin Feng felt a chill run down his spine. Damn it, why didn't you sue me? Qin Feng cursed angrily. The demonic eye clearly knew that this was the 18th level of hell, so why did it still let him in? Others can avoid this tribulation, but you can't, the demonic eye said in a very low voice. Qin Feng didn't have time to play riddles with it. He asked, am I a human or a ghost now? Is there a difference? Didn't all of you live as neither human nor ghost before? Old devil, I'm not in the mood to talk about this with you. Just tell me, am I dead or not? Can I still continue on this path? I said, you can't avoid this tribulation. The demonic eye was silent for a moment, then said, no one can say for sure about the underworld. As for whether you're still alive, whether you're a human or a ghost, can't you feel it? Don't believe what you see, and don't care what you hear. Feel with your heart. If you think you're a human, then you're a human. Hearing the demonic eye's words, Qin Feng breathed a sigh of relief. He looked at everyone and said, whether this is the Yang prison or not, we can't turn back. We can only continue on. If we're really dead and become ghosts, then what can't we face? Hearing this, everyone nodded. They weren't ordinary people. They quickly calmed down, returned to the tunnel, and continued on. Everything in the tunnel was normal. They walked for about 500 meters, and the light in front of them lit up slightly. Although it was still dim, they could barely see. An underground river appeared in front of them. At the end of the tunnel, the river water flowed. That's... Following the direction of the river, Qin Feng suddenly found some bones scattered more than 100 meters away. Everyone walked carefully. There were bones scattered here. They were sure that these were all human bones, and there were even human-shaped skulls. Obviously, someone had walked here before. Maybe the legend is not true. Seeing these white bones, they relaxed. At least, this proved that there had been living people here and not ghosts. Da-da-da. Suddenly, a crisp sound came from the depths. Their faces changed drastically at the same time, and their hair stood on end. Something was running from the depths. In a flash, they didn't even have time to turn around. They saw a black skeletal hand running quickly from the ground in the distance. With a whoosh, it shot toward Tan Xian. Tan Xian's face changed drastically. He quickly mobilized his spiritual power and blasted it toward the black skeletal hand. Bang! The skeletal hand stopped in midair, and Tan Xian was blasted more than 10 meters away. The skeletal hand spun in midair and exploded in all directions. Anyone who came into contact with it was blasted away. Finally, the skeletal hand pointed at Qin Feng and shot toward him. Qin Feng's face changed slightly. He mobilized his spiritual power. Black and white light wrapped around his palm, and then he slapped it. When the two palms touched, a black light suddenly burst out and disappeared in an instant. At the same time, the black skeletal hand also disappeared. How is it? Tan Xian and the others ran over with worried expressions. It's okay. Let's continue walking. Qin Feng's face was slightly unnatural for a moment, but it quickly disappeared. He casually lowered his palm. What is this thing? It's too strange. Everyone was on guard. This skeletal hand was too powerful. It could send them flying one after another. They were worried that this thing would sneak attack them from somewhere. Everyone was on guard as they walked in. Qin Feng held onto the big flower and walked to the back. His hand that was hanging down slowly loosened. In the center of his palm, there was a small piece of black-colored hand bone. Furthermore, it was slowly merging into his palm at a speed visible to the naked eye. Finally, the black skeletal hand disappeared and completely fused with Qin Feng's skeletal hand. There was no difference. Chapter 392. Door of Life and Death. Choice Qin Feng's face was calm, but his heart was in turmoil. The black hand bone had completely fused with his palm. The black hand bone had already fused with his palm during the collision just now, but he had deliberately hidden it so as not to arouse their concern. Moreover, he could vaguely feel that the black hand bone did not have any malicious intent, or else his body would have already shown signs of abnormality. Moreover, the moment the two bones fused, he vaguely received a thought. Go deeper. He did not know why he had such a thought, but there must be a reason. Moreover, he was afraid that they would notice, so he said that to divert their attention. Old devil, what is this thing? Qin Feng asked in his mind. The hand bone had not shown any abnormality, and his body was normal, but this matter was too strange, so he could not help but worry. Don't worry. If it is harmful, I will take action. The demon eye's words made Qin Feng feel much more relieved. The group carefully went deeper, and the surrounding temperature dropped even lower, with chilly winds raging from time to time. Fortunately, other than the black hand bone, there were no other abnormalities. The group continued forward, and nothing unexpected happened. After walking for about an hour, they finally reached the end of the tunnel, but the path in front of them made them feel awkward. At the end of the path, there were two ancient bronze doors, and on the two doors were written two simple words: Door of Life and Door of Death. In the silence, there was a hint of treachery. Even if they use a rotten wooden box to test it, it would be useless because there was a reaction. Door of Life, Door of Death. Which door should we take? Tan Xian frowned, but did not say anything and looked at Qin Feng. If it were you, which door would you choose? Qin Feng asked Tan Xian. Hearing this, Tan Xian was silent, and his eyes swept back and forth between the two doors, not knowing how to choose. What about you guys? Qin Feng looked at Jing Wui, Xin Yuan Ao, and the others. Of course, the door of life. Su Xiaochun's voice broke the silence. I also think we should take the life gate. If both signs are real, taking the life gate should be safer. Ouyang Qingqing nodded slightly and said, but if it's a random sign, then any one of them will be the same. Only the two of them spoke. Everyone else fell into deep thought. After a long while, the Nightwalker, Xianyuan Xiantian, and the others felt that it was safer to take the life gate. Let's take the life gate. Jing Wui said. What about you? Qin Feng looked at Xianyuan Owl. Xianyuan Owl did not respond. Instead, he asked, what do you choose? Qin Feng looked at the life gate. After a long time, he sighed and said softly, I choose the death gate. His decision shocked everyone. Given the choice between life and death, anyone would choose to live, but he actually chose to die. Entering the gate of death, it was obvious that there was only a slim chance of survival. Qin Feng, what did you say? Choose the death gate? Su Xiaochun's eyes widened in confusion. Tan Xian stared at the death gate without saying a word. Why did you choose the death gate? Xianyuan Owl looked at Qin Feng and asked. It's simple, because most people choose the life gate. Qin Feng smiled and said, what do you mean? Is it wrong to choose the life gate? Ouyang Qingqing rolled her eyes at Qin Feng. Actually, there's nothing wrong with this choice. It's just that people usually choose the life gate and ignore the death gate. Shaking his head, Qin Feng said softly, if I'm not wrong, the life gate shouldn't be dangerous. It's a smooth journey, but the death gate is extremely dangerous. It's not an exaggeration to say that there's only a slim chance of survival. If that's the case, why did you choose the death gate? Because you all chose the life gate. Looking at the puzzled crowd, Qin Feng said in a deep voice, the life gate may not lead to death, and we may even live the life we want to live. But it's not real. Once we enter the life gate, we'll never come back. Pausing for a moment, Qin Feng glanced at the few silent people and continued, the death gate might be a place with 9 deaths and 1 with no way out. However, there is nothing absolute in this world. Coming back from the brink of death, the extreme of death, there is definitely a trace of life. The so-called death gate is just a real path, but it's 10,000 times more dangerous. And the life gate is an illusory path. You can leave reality and enter the illusion. Although the illusion is beautiful, it's not reality after all. It's not worth being nostalgic. After hearing Qin Feng's analysis, the expressions of the others changed. If it was as Qin Feng speculated, wouldn't that be too terrifying? Living forever in an illusion, even if they didn't die, they would never be able to exit. Jumping out of reality, wandering the 3 realms, no longer in the 5 elements. But this is just your speculation. If you rashly enter the death gate, who knows what will happen? Ouyang Qingqing said. Then you want to go through the life gate? Qin Feng smiled faintly. If you want to go through the life gate, I won't object, but I won't take this path. Qin Feng is right. People's first choice will inevitably be the life gate, but there will never be a way out of the life gate. Xianyuan Owl nodded slightly and said, on the contrary, the death gate will give you hope of survival. Only by going through a disaster will you have a chance to be reborn. The true path to survival is to walk on your own, not something placed in front of you by the heavens. The path that is in front of you without any effort may not be the golden path. Tan Xian nodded and said, although the death gate is dangerous, it's real. This is a test. Those who are greedy for life and afraid of death will forever live in the illusory world outlined by the life gate. Only those who have the courage to fight and face all difficulties and obstacles will have a chance to live. I also choose the death gate. The two looked at each other and smiled. Then I have no choice. Jing Wui spread out his hands. In short, wherever Uncle goes, I will go. Exploding Flower hugged Qin Feng's arm and expressed her position. Since, do we have any other choice? Ouyang Yi and the Nightwalker shrugged. They had nothing else to say. Since everyone is in agreement, let's enter the death gate. The few of them discussed how to fight and defend if they encounter crisis. Then, they pushed open the death gate's door and walked in. Behind the bronze gate was a long and dark passage. The passage was silent, and there was a faint light blooming in the depths. Qin Feng rubbed his fingers gently, and a few wisps of white flame floated out from his fingertips. Finally, they scattered in the air around everyone like lanterns. The flames sprinkled down and slowly expelled the darkness in the passage. This passage was very short, and there were no dangerous situations as they had imagined. 10 minutes later, the light in front of them suddenly brightened. Then, their line of sight swept across, and everyone's eyes widened. If one did not experience it personally, it would be hard to imagine that such a vast and boundless underground world would appear in this dead-end underground world. Chapter 393. The Heavenly Fox Tribe appears. No one had expected that there would be such a world behind the Gate of Death and beneath the ground. Although this world was desolate, it was still a normal world. It was better than the hell-like world, and this made them feel much more relaxed. However, they still did not relax. No matter how harmless it looked, they had come in through the Death Gate, so they did not dare to be careless. They walked carefully in this world, each using their own methods to check out the place. It's very quiet. There are no living things here. After walking for more than an hour, nothing strange happened. They followed the movements of the rotten wooden chest and walked deeper into this world. Gradually, the movements of the rotten wooden chest became louder and louder. It kept shaking, and everyone's hearts were moving up and down. "We're here." It was unknown who said this, but everyone hurriedly raised their heads to look. They saw that not far away, there was a huge palace. The entire palace was dark and gave off a desolate feeling. It gave off a very oppressive feeling. In a large square in front of the palace, there was a 10-meter-tall platform that looked like an altar. Around the platform, there were 4 stone dragons. The stone dragons spat out rays of light that gathered above the platform. Rays of mysterious light fell down and enveloped the platform. Is that the teleportation portal? They were surprised because they could feel the movements of the rotten wooden chest. It was the biggest movement here, and there was no doubt that it was the teleportation portal. Everyone ran over quickly. Wait! Suddenly, Qin Feng stopped a few of them. They stopped at a public square some distance away from the stage as they stared at Qin Feng with astonishment in their eyes. "What's wrong?" Seeing Qin Feng's serious face, Ten Xian asked. "Something's not right." Qin Feng looked around sharply. Although he did not find anything, he could feel a terrifying aura locking onto them. It was as though a heaven-devouring titanic beast was staring at them. Seeing him like this, the others were also on guard. They looked around, but did not find anything out of the ordinary. "Qin Feng, are you?" As soon as Xianyuan Xiantian made his move, he was restrained by Xianyuan Owl. Xianyuan Owl said in a low voice, "At this juncture, he won't cause any trouble. Moreover, I also feel that it's a little strange that he found the teleportation formation so easily without any obstruction. In the past, even the 8 Overlord tribes could not break in. Now there's still the 4 Overlord tribes and countless spiritual beast races outside. Why can't they come in?" With Xianyuan Zhao's reminder, all of them recovered from their shock. Even though their journey was filled with danger, it was more shocking than dangerous in the end, and they hadn't encountered any actual danger. So, jumping out to take a look at this matter had indeed gone too smoothly. But there really isn't anything special nearby, Ouyang said as his eyes constantly scanned the surroundings. "What did you find?" Xianyuan Owl asked, and then said, "Qin Feng, at this time, our goal is the same, which is to leave this place. The grudges between us will be settled in the future. You should know the importance of cooperation now." "Of course I know." Qin Feng glanced at him, frowned slightly, and said, "I can't tell exactly what it is, but I feel that something is wrong, as if we were being watched by something." As soon as this remark came out, everyone was shocked. Spiritual power quickly spread out, and they were alert to the surroundings. "Heavenly Fox Clan," said Su Xiaochun in a low voice. The scene instantly quieted down. Everyone felt a chill in their hearts. The Heavenly Fox Clan was the one who knew their plan best. Why did they not find any trace of them until now? All of them ignored this question. Everyone looked at each other, and they all felt a chill. The Heavenly Fox clan knew that they had a chance, so they should not be like the other overlord tribes and spiritual beast races who fought without a goal. Huh, I finally found it. At this moment, an old laughter suddenly came, and then, not far away, the space rippled and figures emerged. When Qin Feng and the others saw this scene, they were all shocked. The Heavenly Fox clan had appeared. Although there were only a dozen of them, most of them were surging with terrible spiritual power. The kind of fluctuation showed that they had entered the ninth heaven realm. "Why are you here?" someone shouted. The Heavenly Fox clan landed and walked over. The leader was an old man. He did not have a tail behind him, and he was dressed in a white robe. His hair and beard were white, and he had a smile on his face, which made him look like an immortal. "Didn't you cooperate with us?" The old man, Hu Tianlu, smiled gently. When his turbid eyes looked at the transmission array, they shone with a golden light, surging with a scorching and frenzy. The Heavenly Abyss Transmission Array. "After so many years, we finally came here." Hu Tianlu looked at Qin Feng and the others and laughed. "I didn't expect that you guys could come here. If we didn't know your plan and followed you all the way, I'm afraid that all of our clans would have been fooled by you." "You have been following us all this time?" the Nightwalker said, his tone full of shock. They did not notice at all. "Otherwise, how could we have come here?" Hu Tianlu smiled, and then said, "Since you led the way, I don't want to use force against you. Hand over the divine artifact." "What do you mean by this, clan leader of the Heavenly Fox clan? Since it's a cooperation, why can't we leave together?" Xin Yuan Owl asked. "It's not that we can't leave together, but I want the entire Heavenly Fox clan to leave here, so we need to wait for a while. During this time, in order to prevent accidents, I need to take care of the divine artifact to open the transmission array," Hu Tianlu said. Clan leader of the Heavenly Fox clan is looking at things too simply. "It's not realistic to move the entire clan," Qin Feng said. "Maybe, but it's better to take as many Heavenly Foxes as possible. Aren't you afraid of attracting demons and monsters? In the end, we won't be able to leave?" Qin Feng said seriously. "Don't forget, this is the deepest part of Heavenly Abyss. No one knows when demons and monsters will appear. We can't afford to waste time and have to leave immediately." Hu Tianlu narrowed his eyes, then shook his head and said, "You guys really don't know anything about Heavenly Abyss. Do you think you relied on the divine artifact to come here?" "What do you mean?" "Ha!" Hu Tianlu laughed, and his tone was a little low and self-deprecating. "We're just slaves of Heavenly Abyss. Its horror is far from what you can imagine. The so-called demons and monsters are just battle tools created by it. If Heavenly Abyss didn't weaken every once in a while, who would dare to attack? But this time, it seems that the weakening is very serious, and it actually allowed you to come here. Maybe there's a special existence among you, and it's possible that Heavenly Abyss let you go." Chapter 394. Who was more ruthless? Qin Feng and the others looked terrible in the face of Hu Tianliu's strength. This was the Sky Fox clan, the patriarch of a tyrant tribe. It was impossible to estimate how strong Hu Tianlu was. Moreover, there were at least 10 Sky Foxes behind him. How could they fight against him? Qin Feng stared at Kai Yun, who had been silent behind Hu Tianlu. After a moment of silence, he said, "Does the patriarch of the Sky Fox clan not care about Miss Kai Yun's life?" With that, Qin Feng flipped his palm, and the ancient desolate spiritual flame flashed out. "What a lucky little guy. You can even subdue the ancient desolate spiritual flame." Hu Tianlu smiled, and a trace of greed flashed in his eyes. "Boy, don't you understand the principle of not showing off your wealth? Also, aren't you underestimating the means of the Sky Fox clan? If it was the real ancient desolate spiritual flame, I really can't do anything. It's just a small part of the flame." Qin Feng was shocked. His eyes flickered for a moment, and the ancient desolate spiritual flame gradually retracted into his body. If Hu Tianlu dared to do this, he must have removed the ancient desolate spiritual flame in Kai Yun's body. It was too naive to threaten him with this. Since you like to control others so much, hand over your ancient, desolate spiritual flame. Everyone's face was very ugly. The other party was too strong. They couldn't defeat or escape, but if they really handed over the divine artifact, they would never be able to leave here. Once the Sky Fox Clan army arrived, they would inevitably bring in the other tyrants, some spirit beast clans, and the demons that were fighting with them. By then, there would be no place for them. Qin Feng calmed down and focused his mind. Old demon, the situation has exceeded my expectations. I need you to do something. In my current state, I can't guarantee your safety. The demon, I responded. Then what should we do? If we really hand over the divine artifact, we won't be able to live. Moreover, this old thing is still thinking about my ancient, desolate spiritual flame. Qin Feng said anxiously. The demon, I was silent for a moment, and suddenly said, "Do you remember the Black Hand Bone?" Qin Feng was stunned. The Black Hand Bone can deal with them? How is this possible? The demon, I chuckled and said, "Use the power of the Black Hand Bone to break the restriction here and release the demons and monsters sealed here. If you want to make a big deal out of this, you can also destroy any obstacles here and let in the tyrants, spirit beasts, and demons and monsters outside." This, Qin Feng was shocked. If this was really the case, they would probably die even faster. Their target is the teleportation array, so they might not notice you guys. Besides, do you have any other ideas? Since they let you in, they won't let you die so easily. You just need to release them. Demon, I said. However, the latter half of his sentence was so soft that even Qin Feng could not hear what he said. But I don't know how to use the Black Hand Bone. Qin Feng said. Don't worry, I'll make a move when needed. Hearing this, Qin Feng took a deep breath and said to Hu Tianlu, "Do you really want to do this, clan leader of the Heavenly Fox clan? You know, it's not us or you who control this place, it's Tian Yuan." Hu Tianlu chuckled. "Do you think Tian Yuan will be alarmed to deal with you guys?" Qin Feng narrowed his eyes. "Clan leader of the Heavenly Fox clan, have you decided? Don't think that you have everything under control. There are forces here that can deal with you. I don't want to go to this point either. Now we can leave together, but if clan leader of the Heavenly Fox clan insists, then let's see who is more ruthless. We can afford to risk our lives with a few people who have no way to survive." Hu Tianliu's eyes gradually became cold, and he stared at Qin Feng. After a moment, he waved his hand and said, "Do it." Suddenly, the masters of the Heavenly Fox clan pressed forward. Seeing this, Qin Feng sighed softly. "Old demon, do it." His eyes instantly turned pitch black, emitting an indescribable sense of vicissitudes and desolation. Qin Feng quickly formed seals with his hands, and one of his palms was pitch black, with profound and obscure vein patterns that were faintly discernible. With a boom, the world suddenly shook, and endless light seeped out from the void. Then, a fierce, murderous aura broke out. In the blink of an eye, the quiet world was crowded with figures, and a strong smell of blood permeated the air. The Giant Clan, the Dwarf Clan, the Naga Clan, the Heavenly Fox Clan, various Spirit Beast clans, and countless evil spirits all appeared here in an instant. They were also stunned at this time, and did not understand why they appeared here. However, when they saw the transmission array, their eyes immediately turned red, and they madly rushed over. Duh! Countless demons and monsters rushed over. They were all pitch black and came in all shapes and sizes. These demons and monsters all had a cold metallic luster, as if they were made of steel. In the end, they were like a flood of steel, fiercely clashing with the other races. In an instant, blood splashed hundreds of feet high. I have to open the seal and let them out, so I don't have time to help you. You have to hold on as long as possible, and they will help you. Qin Feng just wanted to ask, but the demon I had already flown out and floated above the palace. Seeing this, Qin Feng could only sigh, and said loudly to Tan Xian, Xin Yuan Owl, and the others, who had not yet recovered from the shock, "Everyone, try your best to stall for time. I have a way to get you out of here." Everyone nodded solemnly. Although they did not know what Qin Feng had done, at least there was a way out. Bastard! Hu Tianlu roared, and a big hand reached out toward Qin Feng. Boom! A violent explosion sounded, and Qin Feng was sent flying by the shockwave. Fortunately, there were powerful evil spirits attacking Hu Tianlu, and there were many spirit beasts nearby, which neutralized the impact. Otherwise, the remaining force of this palm would have been enough to shatter him. But it was fine. Qin Feng was sent flying out of the square and landed among the spirit beasts. Tan Xian, Jing Wui, and the others saw this, and their expressions changed greatly, and they were about to rush over. Don't come over. I have a way to deal with it. You guys stay there, and when the time is right, we will leave immediately. Qin Feng shouted, and with a wave of his arm, the rotten wooden box was thrown toward Tan Xian and the others. Tan Xian caught the rotten wooden box and killed a spirit beast that pounced on him. He said to the others, "We can only trust him now." Qin Feng quickly dodged the attacks of several spirit beasts, and then appeared on a fifth-rank spirit beast like a ghost. Black and white spirit energy wrapped around his hands. His eyes were sharp, and then he pressed down hard. "Hand of Yin, hand of Yang." As he shouted in his heart, the two kinds of spirit energy, black and white, suddenly spread along his palms and quickly spread over his huge body. They turned into two big hands, one black and one white. The area where the white hand came in contact with the spirit beast's body burned, while the black hand froze everything. One white and one black, one hot and one cold. When the two kinds of energy came in contact, a sizzling mist burst out, and a large piece of flesh was quickly corroded. Woo-woo! The spirit beast was in pain when its flesh was corroded. It immediately roared, and its huge body shook violently. Bang! Qin Feng fiercely stomped his foot. That stomp, which contained all the strength in his body, directly made the spirit beast's body tremble. Boom! Chapter 395. Hell Seal Open. Qin Feng did not stop after killing a rank 5 spiritual beast. Black and white spiritual energy whizzed out and slammed into a spiritual beast that was charging at him. The temperature of the two worlds, ice and fire, directly corroded a piece of the other party's flesh the moment they collided. At the same time, mental energy swept out to prevent the other spiritual beast from surrounding him. Whoosh! Qin Feng stomped his foot and leaped up, appearing on top of the spiritual beast's head. With a wave of his hand, the stone axe appeared, and he smashed it on the spiritual beast's head. In an instant, blood splattered everywhere. The head of the spirit beast exploded, and its flesh and blood became a mess. In a short time, the death of 2 rank 5 spiritual beasts caused the other spiritual beasts to be wary. They crawled around and growled at Qin Feng, not daring to charge at him. Seeing this, Qin Feng breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the battlefield was huge, and he only fell into the ordinary spiritual beast territory. There were no powerful spiritual beasts in this area, so he could hold on for a while. But soon, 3 rank 5 spiritual beasts and a large group of rank 4 spiritual beasts pounced at him. Divine Emperor's Might, Divine Dragon Technique, Primitive Battle Body. Qin Feng shouted, and his aura suddenly increased by a lot, almost reaching the heaven realm. Roar! The dragon's roar reverberated and swept across the spiritual beasts. Buzz! Chaotic light burst out and wrapped around his body. It was as sturdy as metal. Amidst the fierce battle, no man, beast, or monster noticed that above the palace, black fog surged and a hunched figure appeared. He looked down at the palace below, his old eyes filled with deep pain and helplessness. "I didn't expect that you would fall to such a state in order to avoid the curse," he said in a low voice, his voice filled with endless hatred and desolation. "We are useless." His expression gradually calmed down, and the sadness and pain in his eyes slowly disappeared. He became indifferent again. His hands formed an extremely ancient seal, and then he pressed it down. Hell Seal, Heaven and Earth Reverse, open. Buzz! The Black Palace seemed to tremble for a moment. Soon after, it became silent, after which An indescribable, fiendish aura quietly spread out. Go, go and slaughter. Release your inhibitions and rescue that child. Black shadows flashed out from the palace. Roar. Ah, a woo. A shrill scream suddenly rang out in this world. Soon after, screams rang out one after another. Following the appearance of these black shadows, the battle became even more tragic. Wherever the black shadows passed, there would be endless bloodshed. None of the spirit beasts or the tyrants could stop them. Even level 6 spirit beasts and 9th level heavenly realm experts of the tyrants would be obliterated by the black shadow in a few moves. There were many figures in the sky, and no one knew what was going on. They could only see the sky full of bloody light erupting, as well as the suppressed screams of extreme fear. It was as if he had encountered something dangerous and frightening. Qin Feng was at the rear, so he couldn't see what was happening in front of him. However, his spiritual perception was superior to that of ordinary people. He immediately sensed several bloody and violent auras rioting in the group of spirit beasts in front of him. What's going on? What a brutal aura. The faces of Tan Xian and the others suddenly changed. They were closer, so they could see more clearly. Those black shadows were the grim Reaper who had climbed up from the depths of the Nine Nether. Wherever they passed, no one was left alive. No matter how strong or weak they were, once they encountered them, they would definitely die. What kind of demons are these? Tan Xian, Jing Wui, Xin Yuan Ao, Ouyang Yi, and the others couldn't help but turn pale. These black shadows were too terrifying. The fiendish aura was so strong that it made the spiritual power in their bodies stagnate. Even level 6 spirit beasts would be obliterated in a few rounds in their hands. Qin Feng squinted his eyes and looked at the rioting area while fighting with the spirit beasts. In the gap between the flashing figures, he finally saw something and immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. What terrifying demons and monsters! What he saw was a black shadow cutting off the head of a 9th heaven stage giant from the giant clan in 2 moves. His heart trembled. He glanced around and found that there were many demons. Each of them was extremely powerful. Their bodies were pitch black, but each of them was in human form. Boom! Suddenly, the earth trembled. In the distant battlefield, the earth below suddenly trembled. Then, he saw a huge crack suddenly appear on the ground in the distance. A black centipede that was several hundred meters long rushed out from the ground. It opened its ferocious mouth that was covered in saliva and swallowed a Class 6 spiritual beast. Its tentacles easily pierced through several level 5 spirit beasts in the dense group of spirit beasts and pressed them to the ground. Mournful beast roars immediately resounded in the area. On the other side, not far away, a giant black bird appeared in the sky. It was also hundreds of meters long, and it was like a dark cloud pressing down. It flashed its wings that were like black flames as it swooped down. Its sharp and long beak directly caught a huge elephant in its mouth. Then it raised its neck and stuffed the elephant into its stomach. The flapping of its wings was accompanied by a fierce wind that immediately swept many spiritual beasts away. Such tragedies did not only happen in these 2 places. Similar situations occurred in other places at almost the same time. Mysterious and powerful spirit beasts charged into the group of spirit beasts and wantonly slaughtered. These spirit beasts were the same as the humanoid demons. They were all pitch black and terrifyingly powerful. At this moment, the Tyrant clan, the powerful spirit beast clans, the giants, the serpent men, and the heavenly foxes were all useless. Corpses were everywhere. Intermittent screams and wails could be heard from time to time. As the scope of the battle expanded, the sound became clearer. At the same time, a faint smell of blood rushed to his face. Qin Feng's heart trembled. He suddenly raised his head and looked in the direction of the palace. Immediately, his pupils shrank. That's the demon eye? Although he did not know what the demon eye was doing, he knew that it should be the demon eye's doing. These are the them that you mentioned? Qin Feng was shocked. This place was quiet and peaceful for half an hour, but now It had become a purgatory on earth. Broken limbs and broken bones were everywhere, and blood flowed everywhere. It was a doomsday scene. Screams, wails, and sounds of fighting could be heard. Some dwarves were directly devoured by the black spirit beasts, while some serpent men were miserably chased and fled further away. However, most of them were blocked here and were still fighting a bloody battle with the black spirit beasts, demons, and humanoid shadows. Countless figures were fleeing in panic. Many spirit beast clans huddled together to resist the terrifying impact and were crazily fighting. Chapter 396. Blood. Fight 3 5th-rank spirit beasts came together. 2 of them were at the middle stage, and 1 was at the late stage. Their terrifying spiritual energy surged toward Buffon. Qin Feng's expression was slightly heavy. He had already lost count of how many 5th-rank spirit beasts he had killed. However, there were simply too many spirit beasts that had entered this place. It was simply impossible to kill all of the spirit beasts of this rank. The Divine Emperor's aura, primitive war body, and Divine Dragon technique were all consumed. He used the myriad beast summoning technique and flapped the light wings on his back. Instead of advancing, he retreated to the middle of the 3 5th-rank spirit beasts. He waved the sky-splitting axe, and under the pressure of the axe, the air kept exploding. A sonic boom was heard, and one of the 5th-rank spirit beasts was sent flying. He turned around and smashed the sky-splitting axe in his hand, and the other 5th-rank spirit beast fell to the ground. The late-stage 5th-order spirit beasts were wolf-shaped spirit beasts with horns on their heads. Their bodies were even bigger than adult wild boars, and their bodies were covered with sparkling scales. Their thick and solid hooves moved as they charged toward Qin Feng. After injuring 2 spirit beasts, Qin Feng could not dodge. He could only wave the sky-splitting axe and slash it. Clang! An ear-piercing sound was heard, and Qin Feng retreated. The sky-splitting axe was sent flying, and the web between his thumb and forefinger was bleeding. The wolf-shaped spirit beast's body trembled for a moment, and then it charged toward Qin Feng again. It opened its mouth wide and wanted to swallow him. At the critical moment, Qin Feng's spiritual energy quickly swept out. The moment the wolf-shaped spirit beast slowed down, he immediately grabbed its 2 horns. Roar! The wolf-shaped spirit beast roared, and its penetrating sound spread out. Qin Feng's body shook, and blood flowed out of his mouth, nose, and ears. He held the 2 horns with a crazed look in his eyes, and he suddenly turned around and rode on its body. The black and white spiritual energy quickly wrapped around it, and suddenly a swishing sound was heard. The wolf-shaped spirit beast roared in pain and crazily swung its body in an attempt to throw Qin Feng off. Qin Feng grabbed the 2 horns tightly. When the corrosive power spread, he quickly circulated the 100 calamity heaven-devouring art. His devouring power burst out and devoured the wolf spirit beast's blood and chi. Rumble! As soon as he landed, Qin Feng's body shook violently. He was sent flying by a rhinoceros. His body felt like it was falling apart, and he felt a burning pain. Roar! The giant rhinoceros charged toward Qin Feng with its footsteps that shook the earth. It opened its bloody mouth, and the smell of blood filled the air. While flying, Qin Feng forcibly suppressed the surging blood chi in his body. Flapping his light wings, he stabilized his body and pushed out his palms. Black and white spiritual energy erupted, turning into 2 beams of light that intertwined with each other and shot into the mouth of the giant rhinoceros. In an instant, sizzling sounds accompanied by a large amount of water vapor came out from the mouth. Roar! The giant rhinoceros roared in pain. Its mouth was full of blood and flesh. It was too horrible to look at. It cast a gloomy look at Qin Feng in the distance. However, it did not charge over. Instead, it fled. It seemed that it also felt that Qin Feng's strength was troublesome and did not attack rashly. Qin Feng heaved a sigh of relief when the colossal rhinoceros fled. Fighting with rank 5 spirit beasts for a long time had consumed too much of his energy. After all, his strength was only equivalent to a rank 4 spirit beast. Divine Dragon Sky, Shattering Roar. Spiritual Voice. 100 Calamity, Heaven Devouring Art. Devour. Roar. His spiritual energy swept out, shaking countless spirit beasts and making them feel numb. The dragon roar spread, and the pure bloodline pressure made them lie on the ground, trembling. The devouring power suddenly spread out and devoured the blood and chi of the densely packed spirit beasts. Suddenly, a large amount of pure spiritual energy was injected into his chi si to recover the consumed spiritual energy. Rumble. A figure fell here. Seeing that it was a human, Qin Feng almost instinctively waved a spiritual energy attack and shook off the spirit beast that pounced on him. He took a closer look and saw that it was Kai Yun of the Heavenly Fox clan. His eyes immediately flickered. Kai Yun did not expect that the one who saved her was Qin Feng. After hesitating for a while, she said, "Qin Feng, I don't want to do this, but I can't change Grandpa's decision. He has to think of the entire Heavenly Fox clan." Qin Feng stared at her coldly. Although his heart was surging with anger, he knew that Kai Yun might not want to do this, but she could not stop all this from happening. He could only blame himself for using the Heavenly Fox clan to muddy the waters. Since he wanted to benefit from it, he naturally had to bear the consequences. If he used the other party, he had to be prepared to be used by the other party. It could only be said that he had calculated the beginning, and the Heavenly Fox clan had calculated the process. In the end, he could only use the method of perishing together with all the forces that had entered Tianyuan. Looking at her delicate appearance, it was obvious that she had been separated from the Heavenly Fox clan in the riot and had experienced many battles. She was very weak. Qin Feng sighed. "Hide behind me." The real battle had just begun. More spirit beasts fled to his side because they were chased by the black shadows and black spirit beasts. Among them, there was no lack of the 4 overlord clans rushing over like a tide of spirit beasts. Qin Feng's scalp tingled, but he knew that he could not avoid it. He took a deep breath, and the spiritual energy in his body surged wildly. The black and white spiritual energy coiled around his body like a giant dragon, forming a huge black and white energy shield, blocking all the spirit beasts outside. At the same time, his spiritual energy and coercion of the dragon were released to suppress the spirit beasts. However, it was obviously impossible for Qin Feng to block all the spirit beasts in one fell swoop. Even if he had the corrosive power of the yin-yang technique, his spiritual energy, divine dragon technique, and other restraints, it was impossible. The black and white energy shield fluctuated violently under the impact of the spirit beasts. Obviously, it would not be long before it was shattered. Qin Feng gritted his teeth and increased his energy defense. With so many spirit beasts crashing into him, the backlash caused his face to turn pale. The corner of his mouth kept coughing up blood. "While there is still time, hurry up and find your clan," Qin Feng said in a low voice. "But it is too dangerous. You will die." Frightened by Qin Feng's actions, Kai Yun's face turned pale. She bit her red lips tightly and stared at the figure who was struggling to support himself. "You are blocking the spirit beasts alone. If this goes on, you will definitely die. I will help you share some of the burden." "Are you King Crazy? With your mediocre skills and the useless heavenly enchantment divine power, what can you do? Hurry up and get lost. Don't be an eyesore in front of me." Qin Feng turned his head and roared at Kai Yun. Kai Yun was stunned by his roar. With her noble status in the Heavenly Fox clan, this was the first time she was yelled at in such an angry manner. Logically speaking, she should be furious immediately, but for some reason, she could not feel the slightest bit of anger toward the person who had planted the spiritual fire in her body. Chapter 397. Dalian Modkai Yin couldn't bear to watch any longer. Taking advantage of Qin Feng blocking a large number of spirit beasts, she turned around and left, fanning away a few spirit beasts that rushed over. "Qin Feng, You must hold on until I come back." Listening to Kai Yun's voice, Qin Feng chuckled, but soon she returned with an awkward and helpless look on her face. Qin Feng turned his head and couldn't help but smile bitterly. It turned out that there were also many spirit beasts gathered behind him. There were also giants, snake men, and other members of the tyrants. His body trembled, finally exhausted, and he staggered back. The black and white energy defense that had been on the verge of shattering also burst into pieces. One by one, the spirit beasts shrouded Qin Feng with a violent and bloody aura. Their fangs and mouths were ferocious. Behind him, there was also a group of spirit beasts rushing forward. Front, back, left, right, the sky, and the ground were all occupied by spirit beasts. A strong and violent bloody aura covered his face. Before the spirit beasts arrived, the fierce and oppressive energy was madly attacking, and the impact forced Qin Feng to constantly retreat. Qin Feng's face was pale, and his scalp was numb. He had never encountered so many powerful spirit beasts at once. At this moment, even a 6th-level spirit beast would have to avoid the edge of the blade. Although he had a few abilities that could restrain spirit beasts, there was a prerequisite. The disparity between their strengths must not be too huge. With so many spirit beasts rushing over at once, not to mention him, who had just experienced a battle, even if he was in peak condition, he would have to turn around and run. Kai Yun was scared silly, paralyzed on the ground, and her delicate body kept trembling. At this moment, Qin Feng felt a deep sense of powerlessness. More than half of the spiritual power in his body and the mental power in his mind had been consumed in the defense. At this moment, he couldn't form a strong defense at all. Looking at the spirit beasts rushing over, Qin Feng suddenly calmed down, and the restless aura around him was instantly withdrawn into his body. At this moment, his entire body was relaxed, and his state of mind was peaceful and tranquil. In the shape of his eyebrows, the spirit mark on his forehead flickered with light. He slowly closed his eyes, and his hands formed a seal almost mechanically. It was very long, but it also seemed like an instant. Qin Feng's 10 fingers that were forming seals suddenly stopped. His tightly closed eyes slowly opened. In the depths of his pitch-black eyes, a wisp of green light slowly enlarged and soon occupied his entire eyeball. The green light slightly jumped like a cluster of green flames, extremely strange. Immediately after, a slightly hoarse and deep voice slowly came out of his mouth. "Dalian mode, activate. Rumble." An invisible aura was emitted, and the impact caused the surrounding spiritual beasts to pause for a moment. Qin Feng's hand seal suddenly changed, and he shouted, "Yin-yang technique, yin-yang body, yin-yang form. Come, yin-yang power. Come out. Yin-yang tai chi wheel. Buzz." The black and white light around Qin Feng quickly expanded. In an instant, a huge black and white divine wheel appeared. The divine wheel had 2 colors, and in the middle was a yin-yang diagram. It seemed to be inlaid with black and white bars, and as it rotated, there was a solid mechanical sound. At this moment, all the spiritual beasts in the area covered by the yin-yang tai chi wheel went limp, and their limbs twitched. The corrosive power spread, and all the surrounding creatures were corroded. Even the ground collapsed, and sizzling sounds could be heard. From the moment the spiritual beast broke through the defense to Qin Feng activating the Dao Yin mode, the yin-yang tai chi wheel appeared, and all the surrounding spiritual beasts were wiped out. It seemed like a long time, but in reality, it all happened in a flash. Kai Yun's eyes were dull, and her red little mouth was open. She was in a mess. One move killed hundreds of spiritual beasts, including many rank 5 spiritual beasts. What kind of strength was this? How could someone at the late stage of the spirit detecting realm release such a powerful move? No, Kai Yun's charming eyes shrank. Looking at Qin Feng's back, an uncontrollable fear appeared in her heart. At this moment, there seemed to be a very terrifying force on his body that made people feel an inexplicable sense of awe. Qin Feng looked at the yin-yang tai chi wheel around him, and there was some shock and doubt in his eyes. Did he make this? This is the Dao Yin mode? he softly said, and his eyes gradually became clear. When he obtained the heavenly spirit mark, he still vaguely remembered the mother of fairy's words. Heavenly spirit mark, Dao Yin mode. At this moment, he felt his body relax, as if he had broken free from some kind of shackle. His body was ethereal. His senses were unprecedentedly strong. In almost an instant, he could sense everything on the battlefield. This state was very strange. He seemed to have transcended. This was a kind of transcendence, as if he had reached a state of nothingness. It was difficult to describe with words. At this moment, Qin Feng felt that his body was filled with power, a power that was completely different from before. His strength was still at the late stage of the spirit detecting realm, but he felt that even if he encountered a 9th stage heaven realm cultivator, he would be able to escape. This strange state gave him this confidence. Slowly closing his eyes, Qin Feng carefully sensed his surroundings. Suddenly, he realized that his consciousness seemed to have left his body and was constantly spreading outwards. Everything that happened around him was clearly reflected in his heart. The fierce battle, the painful roars of all kinds of spirit beasts, the sound of insects chewing on things on the trees, and the ripples of water caused by fish flapping their fins in the depths of the pool still entered his ears. It was even to the extent that he could sense all sorts of emotions. There was hatred, killing intent, pain, and despair. He seemed to be able to sense everything, including the emotions of living beings. The current Qin Feng not only had a change in his consciousness, even his entire body had become illusory. He was still standing there, but no one could sense any aura from him. It was as though there was no one there at all. Kaiyan knew this very well. She saw Qin Feng standing before her, but it was like he was air. She couldn't sense anything. Is this the Dao Yin mode? Qin Feng clenched his fists and murmured. He could feel that his use of battle techniques and spells had reached a shocking level. Some of the spells that he didn't understand or were still unfamiliar with could be completely mastered in this state. Even the spells that he thought were perfect were now lacking. The use of various methods and combinations appeared clearly in his mind. At this moment, he seemed to understand the true essence of battle. The yin and yang wheels slowly disappeared, and the spirit beasts charged forward once more. Unfortunately, I still can't completely control the yin and yang body. Even in this state, it's not enough. Qin Feng sighed. Qin Feng didn't panic at those spirit beasts that were surrounding him. He calmly faced them. A pair of light wings appeared and swept the colorful cloud in front of him. He quickly flashed out to avoid those spirit beasts that were faster and more agile. He specifically targeted those mid-grade spirit beasts that were relatively slower. In his current state, he could easily deal with spirit beasts of this level. The sky-splitting axe in his hand had become the most terrifying killing weapon. Every sonic boom was accompanied by the screams of spirit beasts. Bang! The stone axe was filled with black and white spiritual power. It carried an unparalleled strength and smashed into the body of a 5th-level flying spirit beast that couldn't dodge in time. Suddenly, bursts of white smoke rose. Blood was accompanied by a painful scream. The spirit beast's body swayed in the air for a while and then fell down. The 5th one. Qin Feng murmured in his heart. His face was extremely solemn. There were too many spirit beasts. Even if he fought with all his might, he still seemed to be powerless. Moreover, the attacks of those flying spirit beasts were extremely swift and fierce. If it weren't for his special state and the Dao Yin mode, which greatly increased his speed and flexibility, he would have been injured. But even so, he still felt powerless in his heart. When one spirit beast was seriously injured, 2 spirit beasts would immediately replace it. They were endless and consumed his physical strength. Chapter 398. Despair surrounded by a large group of spirit beasts. If one did not have the strength to suppress them, it would be extremely dangerous for anyone to encounter them. It was completely unexpected that he could hold on until now. Finally, when Qin Feng killed the 9th rank 5 spirit beast, he could not dodge in time and was hit by a spirit beast wing. A fierce force suddenly poured on his body, causing his blood and chi to surge and his figure to retreat in a sorry state. At this moment, the Dao Yin mode was also quickly fading away. Clang! As he retreated, a shadow suddenly fell from the sky, and a fierce force quickly attacked from above. Qin Feng was startled in his heart. He abruptly raised his head and brandished the heaven-cleaving axe, ruthlessly chopping down on the steel-like sharp claws. A crisp sound rang out as his body violently trembled. He was forcefully smashed down by this tremendous force. Whoosh! A tail stinger, which was emitting a cold light, shot toward Qin Feng's chest as if it had pierced through the void. Qin Feng, who was shaken to the point of losing all his strength, was shocked. However, at this moment, he was in a state of emptiness and did not have much defensive power at all. He could only use a little of his mind power to slow down his fall. Poochie! The tail stinger pierced his shoulder, causing blood to splatter. The sharp pain made his expression gradually become ferocious. Qin Feng roared at the sky. When the Dao Yin mode completely disappeared, he used this opportunity to escape from the state of emptiness. He suddenly raised his head and looked at the pitch-black poisonous stinger with a fierce gaze. Black and white spiritual energy wrapped around his palm, and he grabbed the poisonous stinger that pierced his shoulder. Suddenly, a sizzling sound was heard from his palm. At the same time, the spirit beast with a crocodile's body and a snake's tail also roared in pain. It crazily swung its tail, tried to escape from Qin Feng's control. Qin Feng's restraint was not something that a spiritual beast that had barely reached the 5th rank could contend against. No matter how it struggled, it could not break free from Qin Feng's grasp. On the contrary, as it struggled, its tail had long been decayed beyond recognition. Get lost! With a loud shout, Qin Feng raised the heaven-splitting axe with one hand and smashed it heavily on the head of the spirit beast that was charging toward him. In his anger, the power of this chop was really terrifying. Poochie! The sky-splitting axe smashed down and directly smashed the 5th-grade spiritual beast's head into a bloody mess. It died without even making a sound. After killing a spirit beast, Qin Feng grabbed the snake's tail and swung it around. The 7 to 8 meter long crocodile-bodied spirit beast with a snake tail was swung around by him. Wherever the crocodile-bodied spirit beast passed, a large cloud of dust rose up, and all the nearby spirit beasts were knocked away. It spun in a circle and knocked away many spirit beasts. The crocodile-bodied, snake-tailed spirit beast was also knocked dizzy. However, in the next moment, when the heaven-splitting axe smashed down, it could no longer feel anything. After killing the spirit beast with a crocodile's body and a snake's tail, Qin Feng stomped his foot and shot out like a cannonball. He grabbed the claw of the flying spirit beast that had attacked him sneakily and fiercely hacked at it with the heaven-splitting axe. Immediately, the steel-like claws began to bend in an irregular manner as a shrill bird cry sounded. The spirit beast flapped its wings crazily and wanted to leave, but it was caught by Qin Feng and could not get away. Die! With a roar, Qin Feng suddenly straightened his arm that was holding the claw and fiercely smashed it down. Bang! The earth trembled, and in the rising dust, blood spurted everywhere. The claw that he was holding also softened after twitching for a while. Poochie! A heavy blow landed on Qin Feng's back, and he staggered for a while. Then, he turned around and directly rushed to the spirit beast that had attacked him, regardless of the surging blood chi in his body. He swung the heaven-splitting axe down. Even if the spirit beast dodged in time, one of its legs was still chopped off by Qin Feng. The spirit beast then fled in embarrassment and hid in a distance, not daring to come again. Qin Feng was covered in blood and horrifying wounds. At this moment, he was in a killing frenzy. He even reduced the use of the black and white spiritual energy. Most of the time, he was fighting with his physical body. He was fighting brutality with brutality. He was fighting blood with blood. He was like a ferocious beast in human form. He rushed into a group of spirit beasts and started a massacre, causing the group of spirit beasts to wail. After a series of battles and killing nearly 20 spirit beasts, Qin Feng's momentum that had reached its peak began to decline, and the strength of his attacks was not as swift and fierce as before. I have to find a way to leave. Qin Feng's face was unusually pale at this moment, but he was still fierce and oppressive. He knew that once his momentum weakened and he could not leave the spirit beast's encirclement, he would definitely die. However, he could not break through the encirclement even in the Dao Yin mode. How could he do it now? His injuries were getting worse. In the battle, he was not a real god of war who could ignore the spirit beast's attacks. However, in a desperate state, the power in his flesh and blood was activated. His whole body was in a state of excitement, and the pain he felt from the outside world was much less. It could be seen that his body was broken and covered in blood. Some of it belonged to the spirit beasts, and some belonged to him. On his left shoulder, there were 3 bloody marks that were so deep that the bones could be seen. They should have been scratched by sharp claws. On his right shoulder, there was a bloody hole that went through the front and back. On his back, the clothes were torn and blood was constantly seeping out from the pores. There was a long and wide purple mark on his back, which should have been caused by a heavy object. Apart from that, there were also many injuries on his body. Those injuries were a ghastly sight to behold. The rosy cloud was wrapped in the light wings, and she did not suffer any injuries. Now, as his momentum continued to decline, intense pain and weakness attacked him at the same time, almost causing him to collapse. Roar! Roar! A large number of spirit beasts were still chasing and intercepting him from all directions. The atmosphere was bloody, and Qin Feng was seriously injured. He did not have much fighting strength left. Fortunately, this area was very big, and he was only in an area where the spirit beast tide was weaker. There were no 6th-level spirit beasts, or else he would have died long ago. The current situation was too serious for him. Tan Xian and the others wanted to help, but they did not know where he was. Suddenly, an earth-shaking roar was heard, and a powerful spiritual energy pressure descended. It was a 6th-level spirit beast, and it was a serpent man. But soon, the serpent man was beheaded, and a human-shaped shadow flashed over. Before Qin Feng could breathe a sigh of relief, his pupils suddenly shrank. That serpent man seemed to be coming toward him. Aware of this situation, Qin Feng's pale face became even paler. His current state could be said to be terrible, and his fighting strength was seriously reduced. Not to mention the human-shaped shadow that easily killed the 6th-level serpent man. He could not even resist these spirit beasts. Old devil, I can't hold on any longer. Qin Feng urgently called out, but his voice was quickly drowned by the tide of battle and could not be transmitted. Boom! Another 6th-level spirit beast appeared in this area. Qin Feng was really desperate. A 6th-level spirit beast and a human-shaped shadow. To him, any one of them was a disaster. The human-shaped shadow violently rushed toward him, and the terrifying energy made Qin Feng's eyelids increasingly heavy, and his vision began to blur. Under the pressure of the energy, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, which spilled on the human-shaped shadow that was rushing toward him. His consciousness became more and more blurred, and finally, he completely fell into darkness. In his last perception, he perceived the giant's fist and the shadow's fist, which were mixed with unparalleled power, coming from 2 directions. Chapter 399. Chapter 399. The Lineage Left Behind. His consciousness floated up and down in the darkness like a small boat in the middle of the ocean. It was constantly being tossed around by the huge waves, as if it could capsize at any moment. Qin Feng had already lost his perception of the outside world. His body floated in the darkness. He was very unwilling to die like this. The way out of the 100,000 Barren Mountains was right in front of him, but he didn't hold on. Wake up. You still have power. Use it, and you'll be reborn. Your friend is still struggling bitterly. Can you not care and not ask about him? Your sister and girlfriend are waiting for you to revive them. Are you willing to die like this? Your path shouldn't have stopped here. You should have stood above the clouds and overlooked the world. Awaken. Qin Feng's consciousness was muddled. When he heard these voices, he suddenly quivered. His eyes were blank. Then, a wisp of demonic light slowly spread in his eyes. That's right. How could he be willing to die like this? He shouldn't have stopped here. Evil demon, give me your power. Kiki, take it and release it. Rumble. However, at this moment, a dazzling beam of light suddenly pierced through the darkness and shone on Qin Feng. Qin Feng's body shook. Then he gradually regained his senses. Bang! A dull sound rang in his ears as a terrifying force spread out. However, when it got close to Qin Feng, it mysteriously disappeared. Qin Feng was puzzled. What was going on? He could faintly sense the terrifying energy surging from the point of collision, but why was it not the slightest bit harmful to him? He slowly opened his eyes, and the first thing he saw was the black figure. His fist was not aimed at him, but at his ear. Qin Feng turned his head slightly. Then, his face became sluggish. In front of the black fist was a huge fist covered in hair. Qin Feng's thoughts quickly returned. He looked at the scene in shock. It was a human-shaped shadow that had helped him block the giant's fist. His expression was blank. He didn't understand why this was happening. Why didn't the humanoid shadow kill him, but instead protect him? Soon, he came back to his senses and recalled what the demonic had said. They would help him. Boom! The energy surged and the giant staggered back. The black shadow carried him and quickly retreated a distance. His body spun, and a black energy wave spread out, blasting the dozens of spirit beasts around him away. You can't die. The black figure looked at him and said, You. Qin Feng was shocked. The moment their bodies touched, he was able to see the true appearance of the humanoid shadow. It was a handsome man with a jade-like face. He looked to be in his 20s, and there was a gentle smile on his face. It was hard to imagine that Shi, Mei Wang, and Liang could actually speak like this. Most importantly, why did he want to save her? The human-shaped shadow did not give him the chance to ask any questions. It pushed him to the back and said, Shi, help him heal his injuries. As for Yang Kai, he rushed forward to hunt down the giant, who was comparable to a 9th-stage Heaven Realm Master. Qin Feng staggered back and fell into a gentle embrace. At the same time, 3 human-shaped shadows descended around him and protected them in the middle. Qin Feng turned around and looked at the human-shaped shadow that was hugging him. He was shocked. The physical contact allowed him to see the true appearance of the shadow. It was a young girl with 2 ponytails. She looked very smart and pretty, and she was even younger than him. You are. Qin Feng was stunned. Who were these human-shaped shadows? Why was he able to see their true appearance when he had physical contact with them? Don't speak. The young girl's pretty face was solemn. A green light flashed on her jade-like hand, and then she patted Qin Feng's chest. This is the power of wood? Qin Feng was stunned. Why did he feel that the girl's power was somewhat similar to his own power of wood? Moreover, the healing speed was even faster than his power of wood. This is the power of wood from my bloodline inheritance. It's not real, so I can't use a secret technique, so the effect is a bit worse. The girl said. Qin Feng formed the seal of the divine wood art with one hand. Suddenly, the power of wood in the world quickly gathered. Divine wood art? The girl was stunned. She looked at Qin Feng in surprise. Little brother, you have the divine wood art? Qin Feng nodded. Then it's easy. The girl gathered all the power of wood in her palm and condensed it into a special rune. Divine wood art. Condense the wood of heaven and earth. Mold the energy of 10,000 spirits. Nourish the flesh and blood. Connect the Tao of fortune. Divine wood art, activate. The girl chanted a special chant. The runes in her palm gathered into a green seal, and then she pressed it on Qin Feng's chest. In the world, endless power of wood quickly gathered. Qin Feng was shocked. The power of wood could heal like this. It was simply unheard of. He could feel his body recovering quickly. Those terrifying wounds were actually healing at a speed that was barely visible to the naked eye. This healing speed was simply amazing. Seeing the shock on Qin Feng's face, the girl smiled. Want to learn? I can teach you. Really? Qin Feng asked. If he learned this healing technique, as long as he didn't die in the future, he would be able to recover at the fastest speed. But even if you learn it, you will need a certain amount of time to use it. As the girl spoke, her palm trembled. The power of wood flourished, and it quickly flowed through Qin Feng's body. At the same time, a part of it was transmitted into his mind. Comprehend it well. Many thanks. Qin Feng was delighted. This was the chant of the divine wood art, and a special method to condense the power of wood. Qin Feng's injuries were quickly healing, and his energy was also recovering. He couldn't help but feel puzzled about these human-shaped shadows. Why did they look like this? And why did they save him? And why was he able to see their true appearance when he came into contact with them? As if she knew what Qin Feng was thinking, the girl said while healing him, "If my clan hadn't split up, you would be one of my cousins now." This sentence shocked Qin Feng. What kind of joke was this? They were related by blood? No matter how he looked at it, it didn't seem like it. He was a human while the other party was a demon. You don't believe me, right? Knowing that Qin Feng didn't believe her, the girl bitterly smiled. We are all members of the Qin clan. Because we were cursed, we declined. In order to avoid being hunted down, we entered this forbidden zone. But in order to prevent our clan from completely wiping out, we split up a long time ago. The leader of one of the branches led his people to the outside world with the surname Yi. As for the remaining branch, they remained in this forbidden zone. They are the current U.S. The leader of the branch that left back then and the leader of the branch that stayed here are a pair of brothers. They are the descendants of the branch that you came from. So, you can be considered my cousin. It's just that we are separated by many generations. Qin Feng stared at the girl in a daze. If the devil I didn't tell him about the curse, he wouldn't believe it at all. But he understood the Qin clan that disappeared because of the curse. In fact, he even suspected that the Qin family was the surviving descendants of the Qin clan. Chapter 400. Internal Strife. Many years ago, we discovered that the bloodline in the outside world had all died. The young girl's tone was filled with sorrow. This also proves how terrifying the curse is. The heavens won't tolerate it. There's no place for us in the outside world. Qin Feng stared at the young girl in a daze. He asked, "Why are all of you like this? How did you all turn into demons and monsters?" "This is the power of the curse." The young girl smiled. Her relaxed tone caused Qin Feng to feel extremely uncomfortable. Although we are no longer humans or ghosts, at least we survived the curse. Qin Feng fell silent. He didn't know what to say. Why did their clan end up in such a miserable state? They had to transform into demons and monsters just to survive. Is there any way to dispel the curse? He asked. The young girl shook her head. No. Qin Feng was stunned. However, the young girl only gave him a single word. Her eyes flashed with a resolute expression. There is. Qin Feng's body trembled. What is it? Continue to grow stronger, surpass the heavens, suppress the heavens, break through the heavens, so that the cage of this world can no longer trap us. It's just that this will be extremely difficult. No one has been able to reach this step in the past. The bloodline in the outside world that searched for a way to survive has all died. The young girl spoke in a low voice. No. Qin Feng looked at her and solemnly said, I'm still alive. The people of the Qin clan in the outside world haven't all died yet. The young girl stared at Qin Feng in a daze. After a moment of silence, she suddenly said, The elders of the clan want to keep you here. They don't plan to let you leave. Elders of the clan? Qin Feng was stunned. He asked, There are people more powerful than your bloodline here. The young girl nodded. Her voice was filled with sorrow. However, they can't come out. The stronger they are, the more they will be restrained here. Qin Feng nodded slightly. He asked in a low voice, Why do they want to keep me here? Because the outside world can no longer tolerate our clan. If you leave, you will die sooner or later. I might die, but going to the outside world would give me a chance to break the curse. Since I'm a descendant of that bloodline, I naturally have to shoulder this responsibility, Qin Feng said resolutely. That's why I want to leave. I won't stay behind. Fearless in the face of death, as expected of a descendant of that bloodline. You didn't disgrace their reputation. Suddenly, a faint laughter rang out. A hand landed on Qin Feng's shoulder. Qin Feng turned his head and saw the young man who had saved him. He had defeated the giant expert. Don't worry, the elders of the clan have no intention of interfering with you. On the contrary, we are very gratified that you have made such a choice. The young man glanced at Qin Feng and continued, Our clan has never feared anything. Even if we had to fight against the heavens, we wouldn't be afraid at all. If it wasn't for the fact that they were wary of our clan completely vanishing, our bloodline would have already left back then. Rumble. Suddenly, the world began to tremble slightly. The young man and the girl's expressions changed drastically. Damn it, it's about to wake up. Hurry up and leave, the young man said. Seeing him like this, Qin Feng was shocked. He quickly asked, What's that? I don't have time to explain it to you. If we don't leave now, we won't be able to leave. The young man charged forward to open a path for Qin Feng. Next to the teleportation array, the battle was much easier because of the human-shaped shadow, the evil spirits, and the black spirit beasts. Without the rank 6 spirit beasts, Tan Xian and the others finally had the energy to pay attention to the teleportation array. Tan Xian had just killed a rank 5 spirit beast when he immediately sensed that something was wrong. He turned his head and found that Xianyuan Xiantian had appeared here without him noticing. Xianyuan Xiantian was attacking him with a palm. What are you doing? Tan Xian was stunned. Immediately, his spiritual energy surged and met Xianyuan Xuantian's palm. Due to his hasty defense, Tan Xian was sent flying. Seeing Xianyuan Xiantian walking toward the rotten wooden box, Tan Xian finally understood what they wanted to do. Whoosh! The sky-slaughtering spear in his hand shot out toward Xianyuan Xiantian. Xianyuan Xiantian frowned. His spiritual energy surged and shook off Tan Xian's spear. However, he was also pushed back a little. Whoosh! 2 more figures shot toward the rotten wooden box. Jing Wui quickly blocked them. His saber chi wreaked havoc. You can't stop us alone? Ouyang Xiantian and the Nightwalker also attacked and blocked Jing Wui's attack. Big Flower attack. The big flower roared. The scales on its arm flickered. A big claw suddenly grabbed toward the Nightwalker. Whoosh! Suddenly, a golden light flashed. Xianyuan Owl appeared in front of the rotten wooden box and controlled it. Damn it! Seeing this, Tan Xian cursed inwardly. Without Qin Feng, they were short of one of their top combatants and couldn't stop the other party. What do you mean by this? He asked coldly. You want to destroy our cooperation now? Now is the best time for us to leave. Don't tell me you can't see it. Xianyuan Owl shook his head and smiled. Tan Xian and Jing Wui stared at him coldly. How could they not know that this was the best opportunity? However, Qin Feng had not returned yet. How could they leave? Qin Feng is already dead. We can't waste the best opportunity to wait for a dead person. When they finally discovered Qin Feng's location, he was blocked in the middle by an expert from the Titan race and a human-shaped shadow. After that, even more spirit beasts and human-shaped shadows appeared. In their eyes, Qin Feng was already dead. There was no way he could come down. Before we can confirm it, no one can touch the rotten wooden box. Spiritual energy kept surging out of his body. With a shake of his spear, he pointed it at Xianyuan Owl and the others. If that's the case, then you guys can stay here too. Xianyuan Owl sneered. Without Qin Feng, the balance was broken. They now had the absolute advantage. Boom! However, at this moment, the spiritual beast's encirclement was suddenly torn apart. A black shadow rushed out and headed straight for them. Everyone's expression changed. However, when the black shadow got close, it stopped. It seemed that it could not get too close. We don't know who will be staying here. Suddenly, a cold shout was heard. A figure descended from the sky and appeared on the other side of the rotten wooden box. Fierce spiritual energy and mind power swept out in an instant. Xianyuan Owl and the others did not expect Qin Feng to appear at this crucial moment. They could not defend themselves and were forced to retreat. Qin Feng grabbed the rotten wooden box and was about to retreat. However, Xianyuan Owl quickly grabbed the other side. The two of them attacked at the same time. Palm winds and fists collided. It's time for our cooperation to end. Jing Wui sneered. He held Di aside and slashed at Xianyuan Owl. Tan Xian also moved. He turned into a sharp light and shot towards Xianyuan Owl. Do you think we have no one here? Xianyuan Xiantian, the Dark Walker, and Ouyang walked over together. Roar. Chapter 401. Space storm on the plaza. Strong winds blew and spiritual energy whistled unceasingly. Both sides faced each other, explaining and releasing powerful energy pressure. Qin Feng, are we really going to start the war now? Xianyuan Owl asked. Qin Feng frowned. He did want to use this opportunity to leave Xianyuan Owl and the others here, but she and the others did not seem to be able to get close to the transmission array. In this way, it would be impossible for them to use their strength to eat Xianyuan Owl's side. It's no good for anyone to make a move now. Let's leave together, Qin Feng said. He and Xianyuan Owl teamed up and threw the rotten wooden chest into the transmission array. Immediately, the light on the 4 stone dragons exploded, and rays of profound light shot out from their mouths, gathering in the middle. The air rippled, space distorted, and a blurry scene appeared. The few of them were overjoyed. The transmission array was about to open. The light wings on Qin Feng's back unfolded, and he released Kai Yun and said, It's impossible for the entire clan to migrate. If you want to stay, do as you wish. If you want to leave, no one will stop you. The rotten wooden chest trembled, and a resplendent light burst out from within. Rays of light shot out, and the sound of swords rang out. With a boom, the rotten wooden chest shattered, and 4 resplendent rays of light shook. Those were 4 divine swords that emitted the radiance of the holy god, and they shot into the mouths of the 4 stone dragons. The light of the transmission array became even more intense, and everyone's hearts tightened. Spirit energy filled their bodies, and as long as the transmission array was completely activated, they would immediately rush in. However, just as the transmission array was about to take shape and they were about to jump up, a terrifying beam of light suddenly shot over from afar. In a flash, it rushed into the transmission array, and a terrifying energy surged, completely messing up the original form of the transmission array, causing the space to instantly become unstable with signs of a riot. Their faces were filled with shock and then gloominess. The transmission array had actually been changed at this time. Could they still teleport like this? Swoosh! The air fluctuated. Qin Feng's palm trembled, and the demonic eye returned to his palm. Qin Feng quickly asked, Old devil, what do we do now? This is going to be troublesome. There is still something terrifying inside. It is gradually awakening. If it fully awakens, no one will be able to survive here. The teleportation array was about to be completed. Unfortunately, it was disrupted. Demon Eye's voice was weak. Qin Feng was shocked. After a moment of silence, he suddenly asked if a powerful force is injected into it. Can it? Kid, don't mess around. The space here is already very fragile. Once space shatters, there will be many uncontrollable situations. The Demon Eye warned. Qin Feng smiled. Isn't it already out of control now? You said it yourself. Once that thing completely awakens, none of us will be able to survive. This is our last chance. Qin Feng's body gradually floated into the air. His voice suddenly resounded in this area, causing the situation of the battle to slow down. Everyone, right now, we are all facing a life and death crisis. I think you should have sensed that there is an even more powerful old monster here. Once it wakes up, we will all be finished. The only thing that can stop it is this teleportation array. Now that the teleportation array has been destroyed, we can't leave. If we want to live, we can only stop that old monster from reviving. The only way to stop it is to destroy this teleportation array. The battlefield quietened down as they looked at Qin Feng, their eyes flickering. He wants to borrow the power of this place to break through space, and then use the destroyed teleportation array to teleport through space with a very small chance of survival. I have to say, the descendants of that bloodline are crazy. The Black Shadow youth exclaimed. Can it succeed? She asked. Of course, it's impossible to destroy the space, but it can be used to completely activate the teleportation array. Even if the teleportation array is destroyed, the space is destroyed, and we can still teleport through space. It's just that the risk will greatly increase. The Black Shadow youth laughed. Although the chances of survival are not high, it's still better than staying here. This is a huge gamble. Let's do it. Since he wants to gamble, let's help him. Immediately, all the human-shaped shadows, demons and monsters, and black spirit beasts attack the teleportation array. With them making their move, the spiritual beast race that was still hesitating no longer hesitated and attacked one after another. At this moment, the place was in an uproar once again. Streaks of spirit energy of different colors crazily erupted, releasing an extremely oppressive aura. Everyone was going all out, unleashing their strongest attacks. Following a series of loud shouts, a series of fierce and tyrannical attacks erupted, attacking the teleportation array at the center. Countless experts attacked at the same time. The momentum was terrifying, and it was as if the sky and earth were trembling violently. Brat, you're crazy. The demon, I said faintly. I'm just grabbing onto the last bit of hope in a desperate situation. Qin Feng laughed and said, although it's slim, it's our last chance. Raising his head, his pitch-black eyes looked at the terrifying attack. Qin Feng chuckled and muttered softly, if the heavens don't allow me, then I'll bet with the heavens. Brat, it's very likely that you'll really trigger spatial turbulence. Even I don't have the confidence to survive. That's why it's called a gamble. Qin Feng laughed, and his eyes flashed with a crazy smile. At the same time, the attacks finally came crashing down with an extremely terrifying aura. Countless streaks of spirit energy converged into a terrifying torrent of spirit energy, which whistled and poured into the teleportation array. Boom! At this moment, a shocking explosion of thunder resounded in the square, and a sharp and ear-piercing cracking sound could be faintly heard. The sound was soft and sharp, but it was so piercing that it made one's soul tremble. Qin Feng's tense body slowly relaxed. This time, whether he lived or died was really up to the will of the heavens. Spatial storm, this time, I'm betting everything on you. In the sky above the square, the space trembled violently, and fluorescent lights flickered. Then, with a bang, it turned into thousands of spatial fragments, which swept out like a spatial torrent. The spatial fragments were like extremely sharp blades, cutting through everything. Pieces of space shattered, and the shattered spatial fragments continued to cut through the space, as if they would not stop until the space here was completely shattered. Every spatial fragment contained a spatial world. If one entered here, even if they were not killed by the space, they would be lost in the spatial world. In the end, they would be exiled into the boundless space, never to return. At this moment, everyone here, be it the spirit beasts or the tyrants, changed greatly. The spatial fragments danced wildly, and the world was in chaos. The space collapsed and turned into fluorescent lights. Thousands of fluorescent lights gathered into a torrent, and finally, it became more and more intense, directly turning into a spatial storm. The spatial fragments formed a spatial storm sweeping through the world. The world shook violently, and the energy was in chaos. Even the spirit beasts that had escaped far away were aware of it, and they let out uneasy low growls. In this world, the wind blew violently, and the sky was filled with rocks and grass, and under the influence of the spatial storm. The energy in the air here began to become violent, and the space trembled, and the void shook violently. Rumble! The dull sound of thunder reverberated in this world, and the whole sky suddenly darkened. Dark clouds covered the sky, and thunder rumbled continuously. The space trembled violently, as if it was about to shatter. Rustle! Chapter 402. Still Alive Retreat. The giant clan, Heavenly Fox clan, Naga clan, Dwarf clan, and all the other spirit beast clans were terrified. This bastard. They cursed, but it was too late. Escaping was the key. At this moment, all the experts' faces changed. Without needing anyone to remind them, they all ran away. This space storm was simply unimaginable. It was going to wipe out this world. One had to know that the fragile space here was due to the activation of the transmission array. When the transmission array was about to be activated, it would order the space here. However, it was forcefully broken by an external force, causing this space to enter an unstable state. However, the space in other places was abnormally tough. Even a 9th layer Heaven Realm expert could not shake it at all. The fragile space fragments moved over, cutting everything. When they encountered the tough space here, unimaginable horror would occur. Because they were of the same origin, this was not a clash between two forces, but a single force. It was the most illusory and unpredictable space force. Once there was a collision, too many variables would occur. It could even explode the space and turn it into nothingness. At that time, no one knew what would happen. Qin Feng also stared blankly at the space storm that was surging like a tide. He did not expect that. He only wanted to borrow the force to open the space and take the opportunity to enter the space crack. That way, he would have a slight chance of being teleported to another place. However, the development of the situation was beyond his imagination. This was the Great Space Shift. It was simply the power to destroy the world. The reason why he took the gamble was that he felt that breaking this space and forcibly activating the transmission array was the last step. This way, even if the transmission array was changed, there would at least be a chance of being teleported out. But now, it seemed that the development of the situation was beyond his imagination. This world was about to be annihilated into nothingness by the space storm. Old demon, do you have the ability to turn the situation around? Qin Feng asked. He knew that he was in big trouble. Perhaps something unimaginable would happen. The space is rioting. There's no other way. The demon I seemed to be shocked by the constantly rioting space storm. He could not help but whisper, something big has happened. This time, the entire 100,000 barren mountains may disappear. If we can't stop it, I'm afraid that even the primitive land will disappear. Is it that serious? Qin Feng was shocked, and a chill ran down his spine. The great spatial upheaval is likely to destroy many things. Without an absolute controller, no one knows what will happen. The demonic eye said helplessly. Space is a mysterious and unfathomable thing. Unless you can control it, you absolutely can't act recklessly. Why didn't you tell me earlier that there would be such terrible consequences? I didn't expect it to turn into a great spatial collapse. Brat, things have really gone beyond our control this time. Borrowing your words, we really have no choice but to gamble. Demon, I paused for a moment, then gritted his teeth and said, before something major happens, there's still a chance of being teleported into the spatial storm. Taking a deep breath, Qin Feng nodded. At this point, he could only gamble. Let's go. That old monster has awakened and is coming over. The demonic eye's voice suddenly became urgent. Hearing this, Qin Feng's expression changed abruptly because he noticed an indescribably terrifying aura descending at an extremely fast speed. That kind of fluctuation was boundless and unimaginable. Even if it had not completely descended, he felt the spiritual energy in his body begin to stagnate, unable to circulate. The strength of this old monster was unimaginable. That kind of pressure became more and more terrifying. Qin Feng and the others tensed up as if they were about to burst. They were suppressed by that aura and found it difficult to move. As for Ouyang Qingqing, Su Xiaochun, Kai Yun, and the others, they were lying on the ground, their bodies about to shatter. Let's go. At the critical moment, Qin Feng shouted, and the demonic eye erupted, temporarily breaking away from that kind of pressure. Then, the group shot into the space storm. After they rushed into the space storm, in a breath's time, a huge palm the size of a small mountain slapped over. The space was distorted beyond recognition under that huge palm, and a terrifying force spread out, causing constant sonic booms to resound all around. In the end, the huge palm slapped into the space storm, and the space storm was torn apart. Countless space fragments scattered in all directions, entangling the huge palm, cutting it beyond recognition. After a few breaths, the space storm gradually stopped, turning into space fragments that filled the sky, and finally merged into the sky. The huge palm was also eroded by the space storm, and then slowly dissipated. Damn it, you actually let living creatures leave here. Did you forget our agreement? The moment the huge palm dissipated, there seemed to be an extremely cold shout echoing in this world. If it's a member of my clan, I will do my best to help him leave. This is what we agreed on before. A cold shout came from the Black Palace. No matter how the space storm raged, the palace was still intact. Humph! That existence coldly snorted, and his aura slowly faded. The distorted space in the sky had already gradually recovered. The spatial strength that originally permeated the air also began to slowly disappear, following which the figures of Qin Feng and the rest also disappeared. Am I not dead yet? This was the only thought Qin Feng had after his consciousness had sunk into darkness for an unknown number of times. His groggy consciousness was unable to allow him to be completely awake. At the same time, it also caused him to be unable to control his own body. The current him did not even know whether he was alive or dead. This state lasted for an unknown period of time. However, as his consciousness gradually rose and fell in the darkness, Qin Feng seemed to vaguely hear some voices beside him. Soon after, he completely lost consciousness. In the following period of time, Qin Feng remained in this kind of darkness and groggy consciousness. However, as time passed, he was able to discover that his consciousness was slowly recovering control over his body. This caused him to heave a sigh of relief in his heart. From the looks of it, he should still be alive. Relying on the occasional blurry consciousness, Qin Feng could also feel that he seemed to be being taken care of by someone. Moreover, that person, if he guessed correctly, should be a woman. His consciousness continued to rise and fall in the darkness. After what seemed like a very long time, a trace of light finally tore through the darkness, seeped in and shone on Qin Feng's groggy consciousness. After a great struggle, his heavy eyelids finally cracked open a crack, after which his blurry vision gradually became clear. What entered his eyes seemed to be a rather luxurious carriage. On one side of the window of the carriage hung a small pale green bell. The bell emitted a pleasant and clear sound as the carriage shook, refreshing one's heart. Qin Feng stared at the swaying little bell at the top of the carriage. His blurry consciousness began to awaken, and his memories also surged out like a tide. At the bottom of the heavenly abyss, the 18 levels of hell, the great chaotic battle, the spatial storm. A mouthful of turbid air was slowly exhaled from Qin Feng's throat. It seemed that he had ultimately survived the spatial storm. He subconsciously clenched his hand, but was somewhat alarmed to discover that his body was extremely powerless. Although his consciousness controlled his body, it was as if this body was empty, without the slightest bit of strength. This caused panic to rise in Qin Feng's heart. At this moment, even an ordinary person could easily kill him. While he was panicking, his newly awakened consciousness slowly became blurry again. Before his eyes closed, the curtain of the carriage swayed, and a beautiful figure swayed in his blurry vision. Soon after, an exquisite and flawless beautiful face froze the moment Qin Feng closed his eyes. Chapter 403. In an unfamiliar place, Qin Feng's blurry consciousness had been drifting in the darkness for an unknown period of time. He was like a wandering spirit, unable to see or hear anything. It was also difficult for him to move. There were several times when he thought that he was going to die, just like that. After drifting in the darkness for an unknown period of time, the muddle-headed feeling of emptiness and powerlessness gradually diminished as his blurry consciousness gradually became clearer. When Qin Feng struggled to open his heavy eyelids, the first thing he felt was discomfort. His entire body hurt from the jolting. The horse carriage seemed to be traveling on an uneven mountain path. Looks like I was saved by someone. A weak voice like that of a mosquito weakly spat out from Qin Feng's mouth. He still remembered that when he had just woken up, he had seen a very pretty lady. Evidently, he had been saved by that lady. Rustle, rustle. A clear sound entered Qin Feng's ears as he vaguely saw a figure walk in. The curtains of the horse carriage were lifted as a skinny figure appeared in Qin Feng's line of sight. It was a young lady dressed in a light purple dress. Her appearance was rather lively and cute. However, there was some timidity and nervousness in the young lady's eyes. After the young lady entered, she quickly saw Qin Feng, who had opened his eyes. Under his gaze, the young lady panicked for a moment. Her small hands rubbed her body before she spoke in a soft and timid voice. Her voice actually contained a tinge of surprise. "You're awake?" As he gazed at the young lady's appearance, a forced smile surfaced on Qin Feng's face. He then nodded his head. From the looks of it, the young lady clearly did not seem like a bad person. The situation seems to be pretty good. However, I wonder where exactly this place is. Have we left the 100,000 Bear Mountains? Qin Feng thought in his heart before he weakly asked. "Miss, may I ask where this place is?" "This is the unfolding mountain range," the young lady replied. She wanted to help Qin Feng up, but he was covered in sweat and did not know what to do. All he could do was stand there. Unfolding mountain range? Where's this place? Qin Feng was surprised. It seems like we have left the 100,000 Bear Mountains. He had never heard of the unfolding mountain range. Clearly, he had already arrived in the outside world. Hearing this, Qin Feng smiled warmly and nodded. "Thank you for saving me. It wasn't me who saved you. It was my sister." The girl smiled and said, "2 days ago, I found you when I was gathering herbs in the mountains outside. At that time, you were covered in blood and wounds, and you were unconscious. I can't save you either. It was my sister who saw that you were still breathing, so she brought you back. She gave you a lot of spiritual energy to save you." "Thank you." Qin Feng gave her a kind smile. He hesitated for a moment and said, "When you saved me, did you find any other injured people nearby?" He was naturally asking about Tan Xian, Jing Wui, Popcorn, and the others who had entered the space storm with him. At that time, the space storm was raging. He really did not know if those people had successfully arrived in the outside world or if they had been teleported to other places. Hearing this, the young lady thought for a moment, then shook her head. She said, "At that time, there was no one with you." Qin Feng heard this, and his heart suddenly tightened. They were not with him. Did something happen, or were they teleported to other places? Now is not the time to think about this. I have to find a way to recover quickly. Qin Feng thought. He quickly looked inside and saw the messy scene in his body. Even his meridians were broken into pieces. Some parts were distorted and blurry, and some bones had cracks. Qin Feng's mind sank into his Qi Sea. The Qi Sea, which was originally filled with spirit energy and full of power, was now empty and lifeless. The spirit energy was almost dried up, and it was the same in his mind. Only the spirit energy in the spirit coffin still had a little bit of spirit energy. "My injuries are so serious." Qin Feng's heart sank. This was even more serious than before she healed him. With such injuries, if it was an ordinary person, they would probably be crippled for the rest of their lives. "I have to recover quickly," Qin Feng thought to himself. After experiencing so much, injuries were even more common. After all, his temperament was far from what an ordinary person could compare to. No matter how serious his injuries were, as long as he didn't die, it was fine. After all, he now had the power of wood and the demon eye. Thinking of the demon eye, Qin Feng's heart moved. He didn't know if it was affected after being sucked into the space storm, but from his tone at that time, it was obvious that the space storm could cause some damage to it. "Old devil, how are you?" he called out softly. "I won't die." After a moment of silence, the demon eye's soft voice entered Qin Feng's heart. "However, the injuries this time are not light. I'm afraid I won't be able to help you in a short period of time. You'll need to deal with the situation yourself for a while." "You're going to sleep again?" Qin Feng was shocked. "It's not to the extent of sleeping." The demon eye shook his head and said, It's just that I've been severely injured this time. I'm very weak and need a rest. Kid, you're too crazy. Qin Feng laughed bitterly. He only dared to gamble because he didn't know that the space storm would turn out like that. If he knew beforehand, he might have done the same. After all, there was no other way. Sigh, since I've already succeeded, there's no point in talking about this anymore. The demon eye sighed and said helplessly, at that time, in order to resist the space storm, I consumed too much energy. I estimate that I will need to recover for a period of time before I can regain my strength. During this period of time, if you encounter any problems, you can solve them yourself. After saying that, the demon eye fell silent. Qin Feng nodded lightly and took a deep breath. His eyes flashed as he thought about what to do next. Now that he had left the 100,000 Barren Mountains, it could be considered another way of successfully ascending the path of heaven. For the time being, he shouldn't have to worry about his safety. The most important thing now should be to quickly recover. Miss, what's your name? Qin Feng asked with a smile. My name is Song Shui. Feeling that Qin Feng wasn't a bad person and was approachable and easy to get along with, the girl didn't hold back. She looked at Qin Feng curiously and asked, What's your name? How did you suffer such heavy injuries? My name is Qin Feng. Qin Feng smiled and said with a weak voice, I came here to hunt with a few friends. In the end, we encountered a powerful spirit beast and were separated. If I hadn't met you and your sister, I'm afraid I wouldn't have survived. You dare to come here to hunt? How strange. The girl tilted her head and looked at Qin Feng, her big eyes blinking. Young people don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. They think that they can deal with anything. In the end, they encountered a powerful spirit beast. Qin Feng smiled and quickly changed the topic, saying, I think you are a caravan? You are. We are just an ordinary caravan passing by this place. Suddenly, a slightly cold voice sounded. Then, a figure lifted the curtain of the carriage. Chapter 404. The Nine Nether Snake awakened. Qin Feng looked at the woman and did not say anything. Although the woman was dressed plainly, it was obvious that she was not an ordinary person. Moreover, she had a cold aura that did not allow people to approach her. This was not intentional, but she was born like this. She was like a combination of Tang Ran and Gong Xiaoxi. When the woman looked at Qin Feng, his heart skipped a beat. He could feel the coldness in the woman's eyes. He didn't know the reason for this coldness, so he didn't say anything. His expression was one of blabbering. Xiao Shui, you are a girl. You need to be careful. The woman glanced at Song Shui and said, I warned you not to get too close to other men, especially strangers. Don't treat everyone as a good person. Qin Feng's eyelids twitched. This woman was obviously talking to him. Sister, he is not a bad person, Song Shui said softly. She was obviously afraid of the woman. Do you think you can understand a person? A stranger? The woman's voice gradually turned cold. Song Shui's body trembled. She wanted to refute, but when she saw the woman's expression, she immediately lowered her head and did not dare to speak. Qin Feng saw this scene and frowned. At first, he thought that the woman was just pretending to be angry because she was afraid that her sister would be deceived. However, from their tone and expression, the situation was not as simple as he thought. However, he did not know the specific relationship, so he could not say anything. Go back to your carriage. Oh. Song Shui quickly nodded and walked out. After Song Shui left, the young woman glanced at Qin Feng, her gaze roaming about him. Miss, thank you for saving me. This one, I am not interested in knowing your name. The woman waved her hand and interrupted him. I will give you 5 days at most. After 5 days, no matter how much your injuries have healed, you can leave. Our caravan still has things to do. We don't have the energy to take care of a stranger. Miss, I have no ill intentions, Qin Feng quickly said. The woman seemed to think that he was a bad person. Words are the easiest to deceive people. The woman chuckled as if she was mocking him. Those who dare to enter the unfolding mountain range to hunt aren't ordinary people. Those who don't have a solid foundation wouldn't dare to enter this place. Qin Feng's heart skipped a beat. It seemed that Song Shui had been here while he was chatting with her, and he hadn't noticed her at all. Although he was severely injured, his spiritual perception was still very strong. It was impossible for an ordinary person to get close to him without being noticed. Clearly, this woman was very strong. Moreover, she had approached him on purpose, wanting to know his background. As Qin Feng's eyes flashed, he only heard the cold voice of the woman drifting over. "Don't treat my place as an asylum camp. Who are you? Why are you here? What intentions do you have? I'm not interested. Being able to give you 5 days is already my bottom line." As she spoke, the woman walked outside. Just as she was about to get off the carriage, she suddenly turned her head and said indifferently, "I forgot to tell you that the unfolding mountain range is not a place to hunt. In the future, when you're trying to deceive people, you should know more about these things." Qin Feng stared blankly at the woman who had left. After a long while, he could not help but shake his head and laugh bitterly. It seemed that the other party had really treated him as someone who had ulterior motives. He just didn't want to reveal that he had come out of the hundreds of thousands of Bear Mountains, so he randomly made up a story. "I have to recover quickly." Qin Feng sighed softly. This woman was obviously not someone who was easy to talk to. She said 5 days, but who knew that she would chase him away on a whim that day? Qin Feng wanted to condense the Wood Divine Seal, but he realized that he could not condense it at all. This made him wonder why he could not succeed, even though he clearly knew the mental cultivation method and the method to condense it. Even if you do, you still need a certain amount of time to circulate it before you can truly use the Wood Divine Seal. Thinking about Xi's reminder, Qin Feng shook his head and laughed bitterly. It seemed that it was impossible to use the Wood Divine Seal to heal his injuries, so he could only use the power of wood. Fortunately, the healing effect of the power of wood was not bad. Some of the lighter wounds were quickly healed, but many of the heavily injured areas were not that easy to heal. They required healing pills, or at least the assistance of healing herbs, in order to speed up the recovery process. He checked the Cosmos bag, and the corner of his mouth couldn't help but twitch. Most of his medicinal ingredients had already been used up. Escaping from the imperial capital to here, he had almost used up all of his medicinal ingredients. There were only a few medicinal ingredients left, and they were not enough to fill the gaps between his teeth. Sigh. Qin Feng sighed, deeply experiencing the feeling of regretting not having enough medicine when it was time to use it. Without the help of the healing herbs, it would be impossible for his heavily injured body to recover to its peak in a short period of time. After refining these healing herbs, he absorbed them into his body along with the power of wood to heal his terrifying injuries. Qin Feng's strength had recovered a little. Following that, he could only use the power of wood to heal his injuries. Although the power of wood had a good healing effect, it was only useful for ordinary injuries. That day in the Light Elf clan, he had used a medicinal pill with the power of wood to heal so quickly. For injuries that were too severe, the effect of the power of wood would be much worse. He would need medicinal pills or medicinal ingredients to assist him. For an entire day, Qin Feng had been using the power of wood to heal his injuries, but the effect was minimal. The recovery of his serious injuries was very slow, and the broken meridians and cracked bones in his body were difficult to recover. What medicinal ingredients? I don't even have any medicinal pills. It's useless to give me another 5 days. According to his current recovery speed, he would only be able to walk normally in 5 days. It was impossible for him to recover. At this moment, Song Shui tiptoed in and handed him a few pills that were flickering with spiritual light. This is... Looking at the medicinal pills in Song Shui's hand that were emitting a medicinal fragrance, Qin Feng was stunned. These are medicinal pills for healing. Sister will only give you 5 days. You have to recover quickly. Song Shui whispered, "Don't let my sister know about this." Qin Feng was slightly moved. He didn't pretend to be pretentious and took the pills. He said seriously, "Song Shui, thank you." Song Shui smiled and hurriedly left. Seeing that she was afraid of being discovered, Qin Feng shook his head and smiled. His face became serious again as he looked at the pills in his hand. This was related to how much he could recover. Whoosh! Just as he was about to take the pills, his arm felt cold. Following that, a small black snake coiled around him and quickly swallowed one of the pills. Another snake. Qin Feng was shocked. Seeing that it had swallowed one of the pills in such a short time, his heart ached. He hurriedly put away the rest. You've awakened? Qin Feng was shocked. Ever since he left the Nine Ridge mountain range, he had kept the nether snake in his Chinkoan bag. He didn't pay much attention to it, because the demon eye had said that this young nether snake was still sealed and wouldn't come out for at least 2 to 3 years. However, it had only been a short while, and this fellow had actually come out. Thinking about how it had swallowed the pills, Qin Feng's mouth twitched. He finally understood why he had used up the medicinal ingredients so quickly. It was because this fellow had secretly eaten them. He knew it. When he left the St. Ryu Inn, he had collected countless high-grade medicinal ingredients. He had even visited the herb garden once. His collection could be said to be quite rich. Even if he was squandering, it was impossible for him to use them all up in such a short time. Chapter 405. Archaic Descendants. No wonder his medicinal herbs were consumed so quickly. It turned out that it was all eaten by this little thing. Qin Feng was so angry that his liver was in pain. These medicinal herbs were the life of his family now. But they were already eaten. What else could he do? Little thing, you have to do something after eating my things. Qin Feng stared at the nether snake and said. He was just speaking nonsense and was depressed. In the end, the nether snake propped up its head and nodded like a human. Qin Feng was astonished. Could it be that the nether snake could understand his words? The nether snake is a special breed. It is the king of snakes. Normally, nether snakes gain intelligence after 5 years of birth. Within 10 years, their intelligence is no weaker than a human's. The demon eye's voice sounded. I estimate that this nether snake was born around 3 years ago. It actually gained intelligence. It seems that the bloodline rank of the nether snake is quite high. How high can it be? How strong is it now? Qin Feng asked. If it evolves to a certain extent, it might become a mysterious nether snake and become an archaic descendant. Archaic descendant. Qin Feng's heart shook. There was no doubt that waves were set off. Archaic descendant. Legend has it that in the ancient times, there were some spirit beasts that obtained the fortune of heaven and earth and obtained the inheritance of the god bloodline. They entered the ultimate evolution and shed their mortal beast bodies. They changed their flesh and blood, transcending the shackles of heaven and earth and entering a new realm. Their bodies and even their bloodlines underwent a qualitative change. These spirit beasts were called divine beasts by later generations. Divine beasts were above all spirit beasts. They were protected by the heavens and were an existence that transcended mortal beasts. If they grew up without any accidents, they would definitely step into the top of the world. For example, the divine dragon art that he cultivated. Dragons were a type of divine beast. They were born strong and could suppress all spirit beasts. He only used a simple form, but it had a great effect on spirit beasts. The evolution and cultivation of divine beasts far surpassed that of other spirit beasts. They were the favored children of heaven and earth. In the world of spirit beasts, they had supreme status and prestige. Ordinary spirit beasts didn't dare to provoke them and could only submit. It was also because of their innate strength and unparalleled bloodline power that the development of this kind of mythological beast race was rather withered. Perhaps it was because the world paid particular attention to balance. The number of mythological beasts born with perfect bloodline in each generation was very few. Most of them were ordinary mythological beasts. Moreover, there were very few of them in each generation. With the passing of time, except for a few tyrannical races, most of the races of divine beasts seemed to be lacking in development. In order to change this situation, these races began to try to intermarry with other ordinary divine beasts. However, the result was that the original bloodline of the divine beasts became thinner and less pure. It was a beast bred from the marriage between a divine beast and an ordinary spirit beast. Because it had the blood of an ordinary spirit beast and a divine beast in its body, this kind of beast was much stronger than an ordinary spirit beast. However, it was weaker than a true divine beast. Therefore, it was called a remnant spirit beast by the later generations. Divine beasts were born in ancient times. Therefore, divine beasts were also called archaic descendants. Although the archaic descendants were not true mythical beasts, they had unique abilities that far surpassed ordinary spirit beasts. Moreover, the development of these archaic descendants was similar to that of mythical beasts. However, they were slightly better than mythical beasts, so most of them were not extinct. Because of marriage with low-level spirit beasts, the bloodline of divine beasts wasn't pure. Therefore, most of the archaic descendants rarely intermarried with the outside world. Most of them married within the clan. Because it wasn't as difficult to develop as divine beasts, most of the archaic descendants were able to survive. Although archaic descendants weren't divine beasts, they were still quasi-divine beasts. Their bloodline power was enough to suppress all ordinary spirit beasts. Qin Feng didn't expect that this little snake actually had the bloodline of archaic descendants. If it grew up, it would definitely be a terrifying existence. According to what he knew, divine beasts were almost extinct. It was said that there were only a few races. Moreover, their members were extremely few. They had long sealed themselves in a place and didn't come out. Of course, this was what he heard from the older generation. It wasn't necessarily true. However, there was no smoke without fire. Naturally, there is a certain degree of truth in these words. At the very least, in the entire primitive land, including the 100,000 barren mountains, he had never heard of the existence of archaic descendants, let alone a real divine beast. It could be seen how rare these beasts were. Thinking of this, Qin Feng's gaze couldn't help but become kind. He needed to properly train this little guy. If he didn't need pills to heal himself, he definitely wouldn't have been stingy and given another one. Old devil, why didn't you tell me earlier about the power of this 9-nether snake? Qin Feng said as he put the 9-nether snake into his universe bag. I also found out that the 9-nether snake's intelligence awakened too early, so I made this speculation. The demon eye said, however, that existence used all of its methods to send the 9-nether snake out. It should have known that it was extraordinary and couldn't bear for it to fall in that damned place. Qin Feng nodded slightly. That senior gave him so much good fortune and only asked him to bring the 9-nether snake out. Clearly, this wasn't a simple transaction. Old devil, what kind of abilities does this little guy have now? Qin Feng asked. This was what he was most concerned about. The specific abilities still need to be developed. After thinking for a while, the demon eye said, however, it is the king of snakes and also has the bloodline of an archaic descendant. It should be able to summon snakes to obey its orders. How is its strength? It should be very difficult to summon a 5th-rank snake spirit beast. The demon eye paused, then said, however, I think it is about to evolve again. If it succeeds, it should be able to summon a 5th-rank snake spirit beast. Evolve? Qin Feng narrowed his eyes and his gaze flickered. If the 9-nether snake evolved, he would have a lot of 5th-rank snake spirit beasts to fight for him. As if knowing what Qin Feng was thinking, the demon eye said, the 9-nether snake needs a large amount to evolve. The pills in your hands aren't even enough to fill the gaps between its teeth. Qin Feng was stunned and asked, how many do you need? According to the pills in your hands, I estimate that you will need at least 100 or so. Hearing this, Qin Feng sucked in a breath of cold air. 100 pills? He only had 3 now. The difference was too great. I can only slowly think of a way in the future. Qin Feng sighed. Using 3 healing pills and the constant circulation of the power of wood, the injuries in his body had recovered by quite a bit. Some of the broken meridians had also been reconnected. Normal circulation of spiritual energy was no longer a problem. With this problem solved, Qin Feng could use the 100 Calamity Heaven Swallowing art to absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. The circulation of the divine wood art also became smoother. After another 3 days, his injuries had recovered by 50 to 60%. What a pity. If I had a few more pills of this grade, I should be able to recover more or less. Feeling the condition of his body, Qin Feng sighed softly. Little Yuan, how can you leave a stranger in our team? Don't you know the importance of this line of work? Brother, I gave him 5 days. He will leave tomorrow. No, this person is very likely to be a spy sent by our enemy. We can't let him stay. Just as he was sighing, Qin Feng suddenly heard a commotion outside. He didn't care at first, but soon he realized that the commotion seemed to be caused by him. Chapter 406. Trouble. Without giving him much time to think, the sound of footsteps approached him. Qin Feng sighed and got off the carriage. He could not pretend that he did not hear anything since the commotion was so loud. Qin Feng had been recuperating in the carriage for the past few days. This was the first time he got off the carriage. He scanned the surroundings for a while and took note of some special terrain. Then, he turned his gaze to a group of people who were walking towards him. The cold and arrogant woman was also among them. Beside her was a tall and handsome young man. However, the corners of his eyes were filled with killing intent and a cold aura. Behind them, there were 5 or 6 people wearing battle armor. There were bloodstains on their armor, as if they had been in a battle not long ago. Qin Feng looked at the group of people and could not help but frown. These people seemed to be very hostile towards him. It seems that they really think that I am a bad person. He sighed softly and quickly restrained his expression. If the other party was determined to chase him away, he could only leave. This is my cousin, Song Su. Because we have been ambushed by our opponents several times and suffered great losses, my cousin is very cautious now. You should be careful when you speak later. Song Shui hurried over and reminded Qin Feng with a worried look on her face. Looking at her, Qin Feng smiled. He then turned his head and looked at Song Su and the others who stopped in front of him. Who are you? Where are you from? What is your motive for approaching us? Song Su stared at Qin Feng and asked coldly. I am Qin Feng. Qin Feng clasped his hands and said, I am just a wandering cultivator. I followed a few companions and accidentally entered this place. In the end, we met with an accident and were separated. I was also seriously injured and was coincidentally rescued by your caravan. Thank you very much. Song Su asked, Where are you from? Sin City? Qin Feng said. Song Su frowned and stared at Qin Feng without blinking. He said, You are from Sin City? Qin Feng nodded and said, I was chased by my enemies and escaped from there. I accidentally entered the unfolding mountain range. Sin City was a place that he had inadvertently learned about from Song Shui 2 days ago. It wasn't too far away from the unfolding mountain range, and it was also a place that no one cared about. It was a place where criminals and heinous villains gathered. In the chaotic lands, there was no way to identify them. This was the best way to hide. I'm not familiar with this place, and I don't know the distribution of forces here, so I wasn't sent by any force. You can rest assured about that. Miss, please give me 5 days to recuperate. Don't worry. No matter how much I recover tomorrow, I won't bother you again, Qin Feng said. Song Su frowned slightly and didn't say anything. Cousin Song Su, he really isn't a bad person. Just let him rest here for another day, Song Shui whispered. Brother, I've examined him. He's severely injured and his meridians are almost all broken. Even if he can recover, he'll be a cripple. No matter what his motive is, he's no threat to us, Song Yuan whispered. Song Su thought for a moment and nodded. He said, You only have 1 day. Leave immediately tomorrow. Also, I don't care who you are or what your motive is. Leave immediately tomorrow and don't play any tricks. Otherwise, don't blame me for not showing mercy. As he spoke, Song Su's gaze carried some warning as he looked at Qin Feng. After that, he turned around and left. 5 days. That's our bottom line. Song Yuan glanced at Qin Feng and turned to leave. Miss, how can I stay in the caravan? Qin Feng called out to Song Yuan and said helplessly, My injuries are very serious now. I really need a safe place to recuperate. From Song Shui, Qin Feng knew that the unfolding mountain range wasn't peaceful during this period. Many families were involved and seemed to be fighting for something. However, Song Shue's knowledge was limited, so Qin Feng didn't know the exact reason. However, he was sure that this area was very dangerous. He could tell from the fact that they were so wary of a severely injured person like him. If he was really abandoned here, the consequences would be very troublesome. Both he and the demonic were severely injured and had no strength at all. Song Yuan's beautiful eyes were filled with surprise. This was the first time this young man had expressed such an attitude in the past few days. You see my injuries. Even if I have bad intentions, I don't have the ability to do so. Cousin, let's give him a chance. We'll let him leave after his injuries are completely healed. Song Shui tugged at Song Yuan's sleeve and pleaded softly. Song Yuan's eyes were gloomy. After a moment of silence, she said, "Leave tomorrow. Don't make us attack you. Please leave." Her tone was very firm, and there was no room for negotiation. Before she left, she turned back and said, "It's not safe to follow us." Seeing the group leave, Qin Feng shook his head and smiled bitterly. It seemed that he really couldn't stay. Just the injuries at the moment? His gaze stopped on Song Shui. After a moment of hesitation, Qin Feng braced himself and laughed dryly. "Song Shui, do you still have the pills you gave me the other day? Don't worry, I'm just borrowing them. I'll definitely return them to you double in the future." Since he was determined to leave, Qin Feng could only think of a way to recover as much as possible. However, in this place, only Song Shui could barely speak, so he could only borrow them from her. "But I don't have much left." Song Shui took out her shriveled Qinquan pouch and poured out 5 pills with great difficulty. She took 2 pills, and her small hand paused for a moment, as if she was struggling. Soon, she put the 2 pills back in her palm and gave them to Qin Feng, saying, "You're injured now, so you need these pills. I'll give them all to you." Qin Feng looked at her in a daze, his heart surging with warmth. This was the first time he saw someone helping a stranger without asking for anything in return. Qin Feng knew how important these 5 pills were to him, so he didn't act pretentious. He only said softly, "Song Shui, if you need anything in the future, Qin Feng will not hesitate to die 10,000 times. No need, you just need to recover from your injuries." Song Shui quickly waved her hand, revealing 2 small dimples on her cheeks. She was very cute. With these 5 pills, Qin Feng's injuries were further healed. All his meridians were reconnected, and the cracked bones were healed. His injuries were almost healed. This kind of pill has probably reached the 4th grade, or even the 5th grade. Qin Feng sighed. This kind of healing pill was much better than the ones he used before. "The person inside, get the hell out here." Suddenly, a sharp voice rang out from outside. Qin Feng was stunned. Was she talking to him? This woman's voice was very unfamiliar. He was sure he had never seen her before, let alone provoked her. While he was still in shock, the carriage shook violently. At the same time, the voice sounded again, "Get out here." Qin Feng frowned for a moment, then got down from the carriage. His spiritual perception immediately sensed the situation nearby. After he landed, he saw a beautiful woman holding a long red whip. However, she was wearing heavy makeup and was glaring at him angrily. "Miss, may I know how I offended you?" "Sister Song Lin, I gave him the pills willingly. He didn't cheat me." Song Shui anxiously pulled Song Lin's arm and said, "Stupid girl, go away." Song Lin waved her arm and pushed Song Shui to the ground. She said fiercely, "You have no right to speak here. Don't think that just because Grandpa loves you, those pills are really yours. If you didn't take out those pills today, let alone him, you would be in trouble too." Chapter 407. Song Shui was in an awkward position. This woman could be considered to be exquisite and beautiful. Her figure was tall and curvy, but her tone was somewhat vicious, making people feel uncomfortable listening to her. Hearing her words, Qin Feng roughly understood that this woman was angry because she knew that Song Shui had given him the healing pill. However, he didn't understand. The healing pill belonged to Song Shui. What did it have to do with this woman if she wanted to give it to someone else? However, he gradually understood that Song Shue's pills were given to her by someone of high status in her clan. The quality of the pills was not low. This lady had taken a liking to them and wanted to take them. However, before she could even open her mouth, Song Shue had already given them to him. This was the reason for her anger. It was obvious how unreasonable she was. Qin Feng finally understood and felt some disgust towards this woman from the bottom of his heart. Even though Song Shue had never told him about her, he could tell that even though Song Shue was a young lady of the clan, she did not have a high status. For example, the siblings from before, Song Su, Song Yuan, and Song Lin, did not belong to the same clan. However, they were still related by blood. Even though Song Su and Song Yuan did not treat Song Shue well, they did not treat her badly either. However, this lady was different. From her actions and tone, it was obvious that she did not treat Song Shue as her sister. A fight between different factions in the clan. Qin Feng sighed. The reason why Song Shue did not have a high status was probably related to her clan's strength. Even though he did not like it, it was not appropriate for him to interfere in such matters. After Song Lin was done scolding Song Shue, she turned her gaze to Qin Feng. She extended her hand in front of him and lifted her snow-white chin. With an innate arrogance, she said, "Hand over the pills." "Miss Song Shue gave them to me. Why should I hand them over to you?" Qin Feng said calmly. Hearing this, Song Lin was stunned. However, she could not help but laugh. Her laughter was filled with mockery and disdain. "Who do you think you are? You're just a piece of trash. How dare you speak to me in such a manner?" Qin Feng slowly narrowed his eyes and stared at Song Lin indifferently. The old man was just about to say something when he saw Qin Feng squint his eyes. His heart skipped a beat, and he swallowed the mocking words that were about to come out of his mouth. What happened? Just as Song Lin was stunned, Song Su and Song Yuan walked over and asked what had happened. Seeing the two of them walking over, Song Lin immediately regained her confidence. Pointing at Qin Feng, she said to the two of them, "Lin Suji's sister Yuan, this person cheated Song Shue of her pills. I want to ask him for them, but not only did he refuse to give them back, he even threatened me." Hearing this, Song Su and Song Yuan both looked at Qin Feng at the same time. The former's face immediately darkened. "Did you really take Song Shue's pill?" Song Shue raised her head and whispered, "Big brother Song Su, I was the one who volunteered to give the pill to big brother Qin Feng." "Stupid girl, you have no right to speak here." Song Lin glared at Song Shue and reached out to hit her. "Xiao Lin," Song Yuan shouted, stopping Song Lin. "Sister Yuan, this stupid girl is too bold. She actually dared to talk back to me for an outsider. If I don't teach her a lesson today, she will be riding on my head in the future," Song Lin said unhappily. Song Yuan shook her head and glanced at Song Shue, who had her head lowered. "She is our sister after all. Don't go overboard." Seeing this, Qin Feng shook his head. Song Su, Song Yuan, and Song Lin were obviously in the same group. At least, they were close. Song Shue, on the other hand, was much more isolated. These people did not seem to take her seriously. "You haven't answered my question," Song Su said. "The pill is Song Shue's. Who did she give it to?" Before Qin Feng could finish his sentence, Lin Su interrupted him. He took a step forward and stared at Qin Feng. "You just have to answer. Did you take it or not?" Qin Feng took a deep breath, suppressed the anger in his heart, and said calmly, "I did. Since you admit that you took it, then hand it over." Qin Feng narrowed his eyes and said, "Even if I gave it to you, I would only give it to Song Shue. Why should I give it to you? Is the pill yours? I don't care who it is. As long as you took it, I've never tried to reason with unreasonable people." Qin Feng interrupted Lin Su indifferently. "You just have to tell me if the pill is yours or Song Shue's." Song Su's eyes turned cold, and a strong spiritual power spread out. He said coldly, "You are courting death." Qin Feng looked at him fearlessly, and his spiritual power slowly spread out. Although Song Su was strong and had reached the late stage of small heaven realm, if they really fought, Qin Feng was confident that he could leave safely. However, he did not want to cause trouble for Song Shue. so he did not do anything. If Song Su continued to be unreasonable, he did not mind telling them whether his fist was hard or not. Seeing that the situation was getting out of control, Song Yuan stood up and pulled Song Su. "Brother, let it go. Since Song Shui gave it to him willingly, we can't take it back by force." Who knows what tricks he used to trick this wretched girl? Song Lin curled her lips and said, "Sister Yuan, you're cold on the outside but warm on the inside. We can't have the slightest pity for people like him. It's not like you don't know how precious this girl's pills are. He can cheat now, but who knows what he will do in the future. Little Lin, this is a life-saving pill that grandfather gave to Song Shui. Since the pill is hers, she can give it to whoever she wants. If anything happens in the future, it will be her own fault." Song Yuan frowned. He could hear the resentment in her tone. She would rather give a good medicinal pill to a stranger than give it to her own family. Even though she was cold by nature, she still felt a little uncomfortable in her heart. Hearing Song Yuan's words, Song Lin pursed her lips and snorted. This wretched girl promised to give me a few pills. Now that she has broken her promise, who will be responsible for my loss? Sister Song Lin, I will return them to you in the future, Song Shui said softly. Hearing this, Song Lin's expression softened. She said, "You said it yourself. 10 fifth-grade pills. I will give you 1 month to pay it back." 10 pills? Song Shui opened her mouth and said, "I didn't say I would give you 10 pills. This is the price you have to pay for lying to me." Song Lin snorted. "You don't want to?" Song Shui looked at Song Lin, then lowered her head. "Fine, I will give it to you." Seeing this, Song Lin gave up and a proud smile appeared on her face. Regarding this, Song Su and Song Yuan did not say anything. The group of people left, and no one helped Song Shui up from the ground. Qin Feng sighed and shook his head. He walked up and helped Song Shui up. Looking at Song Lin's back, he said softly, "If I help you teach them a lesson, will it cause trouble for you?" Song Shui stared blankly at Qin Feng. For a moment, she did not know if Qin Feng had the ability to do so. She shook her head and said, "They are my brother and sister. I don't want them to get hurt. But they don't see you as their sister." Qin Feng sighed in his heart and did not say anything. Chapter 408. Ambushed after another day of recuperation, Qin Feng's injuries were about 80 to 90% healed. As long as the battle wasn't too intense, he wouldn't be affected. The recovery of his strength also gave Qin Feng a lot more confidence. At the very least, he could face dangerous situations alone. Using the power of wood to heal his injuries was no longer effective. Taking advantage of his free time, Qin Feng took out the 9-nether snake and said to it, "Little guy, can you help me check the situation outside?" This little guy had eaten a lot of his herbs, but he still hadn't seen its ability. No matter what the demon eye said, it wasn't as real as seeing it with his own eyes. The little black snake raised its head and looked at the Chinquan pouch, then glanced at Qin Feng and shook its head. "What the hell?" Qin Feng grinned. This little guy really had a lot of tricks up his sleeves. Although the 9-nether snake couldn't speak, its actions were clearly saying, "If you want me to do something, I can do it, but please take out some herbs first. You've eaten all my medicinal ingredients." Qin Feng's lips twitched. His eyes spun as he spoke. "Little thing, why don't you show me your abilities first? If I'm satisfied, I'll definitely give you more good stuff. I can consider giving you one of those medicinal pills from before." The 9-nether snake's eyes suddenly lit up, giving Qin Feng a fright. This little guy was really going to become a spirit. The 9-nether snake quickly slipped out, while Qin Feng waited quietly in the carriage. 10 minutes later, the 9-nether snake returned. Qin Feng hurriedly asked, "How is it? What's the situation outside?" The 9-nether snake raised its head, and a halo spread out, spreading to Qin Feng's forehead. Suddenly, a special scene appeared in his mind. It was like a combination of sound and image. It was hard to say whether it was words or images, but it felt like a communication of consciousness. It was as if Qin Feng was there in person and knew everything the 9-nether snake knew. Qin Feng was stunned. There were many things about the outside situation in his mind, as if he had gone out and discovered it himself. How long had it been? That little thing had actually run so far? Chin Feng was shocked. The nine nether snake had scouted out everything within a radius of 5 kilometers. In this short amount of time, he could only scout out 1 or 2 directions at most. The nine nether snake is the king of snakes. Naturally, it can summon the snakes here to obey its orders. The communication between snakes is transmitted through images and memories. This method is naturally beneficial for the nine nether snake to understand everything here very quickly, said the demon eye. Hearing this, Chin Feng nodded and held the nine nether snake in the palm of his hand. This was a great treasure. In the future, if he used it to scout the way, it could be said to be the best. Suddenly, Chin Feng froze. In this memory, he saw many people hiding in the darkness in the distant forest. He did not pay attention to them before, but now that he carefully examined this memory, Chin Feng realized that something was wrong. These people seem to be lying in ambush. Their target is this caravan. In the end, Chin Feng was shocked to discover that the target of the people hiding in the surrounding forest was actually Song Shue's caravan. When he discovered the girl sitting in the forest, Chin Feng was shocked and hurriedly walked out carefully. Why did she go out? Chin Feng quietly came here. Using the blurry moonlight, he could see that Song Shue's shoulders were shaking as she sat on a rock. It was obvious that she was crying. Chin Feng sighed inwardly. He leaned against a tree and did not approach. The little girl looked like she did not care about anything. She was submissive in front of her brothers and sisters, but in reality, she was very meticulous. It was just that she chose not to say anything and endured it alone. Since this was the case, Chin Feng did not want to expose her pretense of being strong. In such a large family, he knew very well what kind of life the bloodline that was not valued lived. He had experienced it before, and those people's faces were even worse than Song Lin's. He also pretended not to care. This kind of pain was something he did not want others to know. After sitting quietly for a while, Song Shue stood up, wiped the tears from her face, and restored her original smile. Song Shue, you have to be strong. At least grandfather will still love you. Song Shue raised her small fists and cheered herself on. But when a cold wind blew, she suddenly shrank back and quickly ran back to the camp. Chin Feng quietly followed behind her. Only when he saw her return to her carriage did he retreat. Looking at the pitch-black forest, Chin Feng hesitated for a while. In the end, he still returned and did not go to check. He didn't have any feelings for Song Su and the others. Whatever they encountered, he didn't care. All he could do was protect Song Shue's safety. As for what they would encounter, he was too lazy to care. Returning to the carriage, Chin Feng entered a state of cultivation and pushed his cultivation to its peak. I'm still a little weak. Perceiving his own situation, Chin Feng felt helpless. Even if most of his injuries had been healed, he was still a little weak, and it would be difficult for him to return to his peak state. However, it didn't matter. He could already deal with some situations. As long as no 9th stage Heaven Realm Master appeared, he had nothing to fear. As the night gradually deepened, some of the Song family guards who were on sentry duty became listless. Obviously, this period of peace had caused their vigilance to relax a lot. Chin Feng noticed this but didn't warn them. Instead, he quietly sat cross-legged in the carriage and spread his spiritual force around Song Shue's carriage to deal with any unexpected situations. As time passed, the night deepened. Dark clouds surged, covering the moon, and the world became even darker. Only a few bonfires could be seen flickering. Suddenly, a tyrannical spirit energy fluctuation suddenly struck, directly tearing apart Song Yuan's carriage. In an instant, the carriage disintegrated, and a powerful spirit energy fluctuation rose from it. Who is it? Song Su rushed out, a fierce spirit energy fluctuation surging around his body. However, nothing happened. The blow was fleeting, but the sound of something breaking through the air could be heard as it shot off into the distance. Want to leave? Oomph. Song Su coldly snorted and quickly chased after it. Soon, a fierce battle broke out in the distance. The Song family's guards and the hired mercenaries also came back to their senses. They raised their weapons and were on high alert. Song Yuan flew over with an ethereal temperament. Her dress fluttered in the wind, making her look like a fairy of the moon. Spirit energy fluctuations rippled around her body, indicating that she had also stepped into the small heaven realm late stage. What's going on? Song Lin, Song Shui, and the others also got off the carriage one after another. Be careful. It's probably someone from the Mo family, Song Yuan warned, her beautiful eyes condensing a light as she scanned the surroundings. Hearing the Mo family, Song Lin, Song Shui, the guards, and the mercenaries' hearts sank. The Mo family was their sworn enemy, and there were many open and covert conflicts between them. Ha ha ha! Miss Song Yuan is still so sharp. Suddenly, a loud and arrogant laughter sounded out, and then a figure appeared. Russell. Chapter 409. Secretly helping in the dark forest, towering trees covered the sky. The intertwining branches were like a coat that separated the forest from the outside world. Seeing so many people, Song Yuan's heart sank. They didn't notice anything earlier. She looked at Mou and said coldly, Mou, you dare to attack us? Is my brother nearby? Hearing this, Mou laughed. Song Yuan, are you naive, or are you just pretending? Since I dare to appear, I naturally have the ability to eat you. As he spoke, he waved his arm. The space rippled, and another figure appeared. Suli, Song Yuan's pupils contracted, and her delicate body trembled. Not only her, but when Suli appeared, Song Lin and Song Shui's faces turned pale. Their eyes were filled with fear. Clearly, Suli's appearance shocked them. Suli, you dare to go against the Song family? Song Yuan's face was as cold as ice. The hand holding the sword trembled slightly. Clearly, this person's appearance gave her a lot of pressure. Mou was already her limit. Now, Suli, who was no weaker than Mou, had appeared. The others couldn't stop him, not to mention the other Mo family members. Huh, Miss Song Yuan, your words are laughable. Your Song family has tried to kill me many times before. Suli looked at Song Yuan, who was standing in the distance with a cold expression, and a trace of surprise flashed across his eyes. Sensing the passion in Suli's eyes, Song Yuan, who knew his character, was disgusted. Her face was as cold as ice. Brother Su, time is of the essence. Let's act quickly. If that guy comes back, it will be troublesome, Mou said. Suli smiled faintly and flicked the dust off his shoulder. With Brother Gui taking action, Song Su won't be able to defeat him in a short period of time. Even so, we can't let our guard down against this person. Suli nodded, and his eyes gradually sharpened. Clearly, they were also quite wary of Song Su. Attack! The two of them attacked at the same time. Vast amounts of spiritual energy surged. At the same time, the Mo family members who were lying in ambush rushed over and fought with the Song family guards and mercenaries. High in the sky, Song Yuan held a long sword in her hand, and streaks of sword energy shot out. Mou let out a hearty laugh as his vigorous spiritual energy transformed into a giant hand that grabbed at the sword aura. Brother Su, leave Song Yuan to me, Mou said with a smile. Suli looked deeply at Song Yuan, his gaze pausing on her exquisite figure. He licked his lips and said, Brother Mo, don't forget what you promised me. Brother Su, don't worry. I only want this team. You can do whatever you want with the three Song sisters. Ha ha. Suli looked up to the sky and laughed. Spiritual energy swept out and rushed down. His target was the other two sisters of the Song family, Song Shui and Song Lin. Just as she forced back a Mo clan expert, Song Lin saw Suli charging over. Immediately, her pretty face changed drastically as she hurriedly grabbed Song Shui beside her and threw her away. Sister Song Lin. Song Shui screamed as she looked at Song Lin in disbelief. Her heart was in pain. That was her cousin. She could tolerate no matter how much she bullied her in the past. But now, she actually threw her out as a shield. Who didn't know what kind of person Suli was? If she fell into his hands, her life would be over. Seeing the pain on Song Shue's face, Song Lin also felt guilty, but she quickly retreated and disappeared into the crowd. Feeling the strong wind closing in, Song Shue painfully closed her eyes. She had been targeted by him and had no strength to resist. Suli didn't think Song Lin would be so vicious as to throw her sister out to die. Then I'll take it first. Suli laughed and reached out to grab Song Shue. However, just as he was about to touch Song Shue, a strange ripple suddenly appeared on the surface of her body and pushed his large hand away. At the instant when they brushed past each other, Song Shue actually strangely moved horizontally. What's going on? Suli was shocked. How could she use such a strange movement technique in the air? It would be normal if she was a stronger cultivator, but Song Shue was only at the spirit detecting realm. How'd she do it? Interesting. Due to inertia, Su Li's body swooped down. He looked at Song Shue, who was floating in the distance, and there was a hint of curiosity in his eyes. He was very surprised that Song Shue, who was at the spirit detecting realm, was able to dodge his attack. However, he quickly restrained himself and rushed towards Song Lin after landing on the ground. The latter did not expect Song Shue to be able to dodge Su Li's attack. At this moment, her expression changed drastically as she screamed, "Sister Yuan, save me!" When Song Yuan saw this scene, she became anxious, but Mo Yu held her tightly, so she had no chance to escape. Suli sent a few Song family guards flying and appeared behind Song Lin like a ghost. He grabbed her neck with one hand and touched her beautiful face with the other. He let out an evil smile and said, "Little beauty, it's best if you don't move. Do you understand?" Song Lin's body stiffened and she didn't dare to move. Her beautiful face was deathly pale. "Big Sister Yuan, save me," she shouted as her body trembled. "That's right, you can call your big sister to save you." Suli smiled and licked her face. There was an intoxicated expression on his face. "You really are a good furnace." Song Lin was so scared that her face turned pale. She begged in a low voice, "Please let me go. I beg you." "Hee, do you think any prey that has fallen into my hands can escape?" Suli shook off the Song family guards that were charging at him and quickly moved toward Song Shue. Seeing Suli coming over, Song Shue hesitated. Should she run or fight? If she ran, Song Lin would be finished. However, if she fought, she wasn't Su Li's opponent. Song Shue's face flashed with struggle, but in the end, the kindness in her heart won out. She took out her long sword and charged towards Su Li. Su Li was stunned for a moment before he laughed. "I like this kind of girl." He reached out his hand, and a giant hand made of spirit energy reached out to grab Song Shue. Bang! The moment they touched, the giant hand made of spirit energy shook and then exploded. Su Li was shocked and quickly dodged. Song Shue brushed past him and left a bloody mark on his arm. "Let go of big sister Song Lin," Song Shue said with a sullen face. She was stunned as she stared blankly at the blood on her long sword. For a moment, she was stunned. She had actually injured Su Li. Although Su Li had subdued Song Lin and couldn't use his full strength, she was still far from being able to hurt him. Song Yuan was also stunned. She had been paying attention to the situation. She didn't expect Song Shue to not only defeat Su Li's attack, but also injure her. She was clear about Song Shue's strength. It was impossible for her to do that. However, how did she suddenly injure Su Li? How did she avoid Su Li's attack in the air? Song Yuan was puzzled by all these points. Her gaze suddenly fell on the last carriage that no one cared about. Song Yuan's pupils shrank as she thought, could it be that person? However, she quickly shook her head. She had examined that person's injuries. No matter how serious they were, his meridians were broken and even his bones were cracked. With such serious injuries, even if he recovered, he would be a cripple. Moreover, it had only been a few days. How much could he recover? Chapter 410. A mysterious powerhouse, the pitch-black shadows of swords and sabers, the sounds of battle, and the clanging of weapons rang out incessantly. Shadows of people were everywhere, constantly crisscrossing, accompanied by the spurting of blood. Suli lowered his head and looked at the wound on his arm. Then he slowly raised his head, and the smile on his face gradually disappeared. He stared at Song Shui, and the corner of his mouth twitched. He was actually injured by a little girl at the spirit detecting realm. This was simply a disgrace to him. Very good. I'm getting more and more interested in you. Wait until I catch you. A ferocious smile gradually appeared on Su Li's face. With a shake of his arm, vigorous spiritual energy surged out and transformed into a large hand. Above the large hand, gray spiritual energy lingered, making the large hand look like it was filled with an evil power. Gray cloud, manipulating spirit hand. This time he didn't hold back and used a very high-level capture skill. The giant hand closed in and sealed the space around Song Shui. At this moment, Song Shui felt a bit of despair. This power was extremely heavy and wasn't something she could deal with. However, even though she knew she wasn't his match, she still attacked with all her strength. Her sword stabbed out, and there was a flash of light at the tip of the sword. There was also a strange power rippling out. However, this power was almost non-existent and was covered by spirit force, so it wasn't easy to detect. Stab! A ray of sword energy shot out and instantly pierced through Su Li's spirit force hand before shooting toward him. Su Li's expression changed, and he crazily used his spirit force to block this ray of sword energy. His arm trembled, and there was shock in his eyes. Song Lin's mouth was slightly open as she looked at Song Shui in disbelief. This girl was actually this strong? How could this be? Her spirit force was clearly only at the spirit detecting realm. So how could she force back Su Li's attack? Su Li stared at Song Shui, and then his sharp gaze swept the surroundings. He shouted, "Who is it? Why are you sneaking around? What kind of hero are you? Come out if you have the ability." His shout caused the entire battlefield to be stunned. After all, he was a top fighter, so his fearful voice naturally attracted the attention of everyone on both sides. Mou and Song Yuan also stopped and quickly scanned the surroundings. Their experience was naturally not comparable to the others. Song Shui was able to repel Su Li's attacks again and again. It wasn't because of her own ability, but because she had an expert helping her. However, the surroundings were silent, and no movement could be heard. Song Yuan frowned slightly. Soon after, her gaze once again looked towards the carriage at the back of the group. Her heart was filled with surprise. Su Li had not acted strangely when he had attacked the others. Only when he had tried to capture Song Shui had he been secretly blocked by someone. There was no such expert among them, and the only one who was on good terms with Song Shui was the heavily injured stranger. However, when she thought about his injuries, she found it hard to believe that it was that person who had secretly attacked him, because in her opinion, there was no cure for that kind of injury. Even if the other party was truly heaven-defying, it was impossible for him to recover in a short 5 days. Who is it? Song Yuan's eyes flickered. Even after thinking for a long time, she still couldn't figure out when her side, or rather when Song Shui, had met such an expert. Could it be grandfather? She was puzzled. Her grandfather owed them because of Song Shui's parents, so he had done all he could to help Song Shui. Was this expert sent by her grandfather? However, that didn't make sense. If he was sent by her grandfather, why would he only help Song Shui? While she was deep in thought, Su Li shouted, "Which friend is it? Please show yourself." There was still no response. This disregard made Su Li feel belittled. Flames of anger rose in his heart as he shouted, "Since you want to protect her, I'll kill her today. Let's see how long you can hide." After speaking, Su Li sealed all the acupuncture points on Song Lin's body. Then, his body trembled and his figure quickly disappeared. At the same time, Song Yuan's expression changed. Song Shui, retreat. It's too late. Before Song Shui could react, a black shadow flashed in front of her. Su Li's sinister face appeared before her. "Let's see how you'll protect her this time," Su Li shouted coldly. His large hand reached towards Song Shui. The air in his palm rippled. Clearly, he was angry and wanted to attack with all his might. Rumble. However, at that moment, a violent wind suddenly erupted around Song Shui. An invisible and powerful energy suddenly swirled around her and sent Su Li flying under the shocked gazes of the crowd. Everyone coldly watched this scene. To be able to send Su Li flying without showing himself. This person must be a peerless expert. After landing, Su Li steadied himself. His pupils contracted. Mental energy. Are you a mental energy master? The air rippled as an invisible energy surged. Then, a large word appeared, go. Sneaking around and not daring to show yourself. What kind of hero are you? Su Li's gaze was sinister. So what if I'm a mental energy master? I can see that your mental energy is similar to mine. You're underestimating me if you think you can scare me away like this. Song Yuan's beautiful eyes slowly scanned the surroundings. However, she didn't find any trace of someone. She couldn't help but frown. Could it be that their luck was really that good? They actually encountered a powerhouse at a time like this. Her beautiful eyes shifted. A moment later, they stopped at the last two carriages. The place was none other than the place Qin Feng was at. Her gaze paused on the carriage. Song Yuan's long eyelashes gently blinked. Everything was locked in place. However, before she could ponder any further, Yu's dark and cold voice echoed down from the sky. May I know which expert is here? I am Yu from the Mo family. If I have offended you in any way, I hope you can forgive me. However, today's matter is a private matter between my Mo family and the Song family. Friend, please do not interfere. Yu restrained Su Li. His gaze faintly swept around as he cupped his fists together and spoke. His voice slowly reverberated within the mountain forest. However, there was no response. Just as he was starting to feel impatient in his heart, a hoarse and deep voice succinctly and clearly rang out. Whoever touches her will die. The sudden voice seemed to come from the horizon as it circled around everyone's ears. At this moment, the Song family guards and some of the mercenaries were overjoyed. There was indeed a powerhouse helping them. When the voice sounded out, Song Yuan's beautiful eyes also shifted away from Qin Feng's carriage. She swept her gaze in another direction, as if she wanted to find this mysterious powerhouse. At the same time, Yu and Su Li were also searching for this powerhouse based on the voice. However, the voice was very faint, and they couldn't find any trace of it. Sir, do you really want to fight over these fellows and offend my Mo family? A fierce glint flashed across Yu's eyes. However, due to the strange scene from before, he did not dare to immediately make a move. Instead, he sinisterly asked, whoever dares to touch her will die. With regards to Yu's words, the owner of the voice from before once again gave an extremely concise reply. Within that voice, anyone would be able to hear a faint sneer and ridicule. It was as though he was ridiculing Yu for overestimating his own capabilities. After being treated so rudely twice, Yu's expression became extremely gloomy as he exchanged a look with Su Li. This fellow only wants to protect Song Shui and is unwilling to show himself. Clearly, he does not have the strength to contend against us and is purposely using this move to confuse us. However, if he does not show himself, it will be very difficult to defend against his mental energy. We can only capture Song Shui and force him out. Yu softly said. Su Li slightly nodded his head and said, leave that woman to me. No matter what, we cannot directly attack. We need to use some tactics to force him to show himself. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.